The stagecoach dust hadn't even settled when Cole Whitmore saw her, the woman who would either save his life or destroy everything he'd built. He'd ordered a bride like he'd order cattle, expecting practicality and partnership. What stepped off that coach in a blue traveling dress was something far more dangerous: hope. But neither of them knew that the past she was running from would soon ride straight into Montana territory with guns drawn, demanding everything, including her. Comment below what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The Montana Territory stretched endless and unforgiving under the October sky of 1875, a vast expanse of rolling grassland that could make a man feel either like a king or the loneliest soul God ever forgot. Cole Whitmore stood on the porch of his ranch house, a structure he'd built with his own hands from timber he'd hauled himself, watching the horizon for the dust cloud that would signal the stagecoach's arrival. His hands gripped the porch railing with a tension that had nothing to do with the autumn chill creeping through his worn leather vest. 6 months. 6 months of letters exchanged with a woman he'd never met. Arrangements made through words on paper that felt both intimate and impossibly distant. The advertisement had been simple enough when he'd placed it in the Boston newspaper. Rancher in Montana Territory seeks wife for partnership and companionship. Must be hardy, practical, and willing to embrace frontier life. He'd received 17 responses. Amelia Grant's letter had been different from the others. No flowery promises, no romantic declarations, just honest words about needing a fresh start, about being capable and educated, about understanding that survival on the frontier required both strength and pragmatism. She'd written about wanting to be useful, to build something lasting. Those words had resonated with something deep in Cole's chest, some echo of his own desperate need for purpose beyond the endless cycle of cattle and solitude. Now, as the dust cloud finally appeared on the horizon, Cole felt his heart hammering against his ribs in a way that annoyed him. He was 32 years old, not some green boy waiting for his first dance. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. He needed help running the ranch, needed someone to manage the house, needed, if he was being honest with himself in the dark hours before dawn, another human voice to break the silence that had become oppressive over the past 3 years since he'd lost his parents to typhoid. The stagecoach rattled into view, its team of 6 horses lathered and tired from the long haul from the railroad depot in Helena. Cole descended the porch steps slowly, each footfall deliberate, buying himself moments to prepare for whatever came next. The driver, a grizzled man named Harker, who'd been running this route for 15 years, pulled the team to a halt with practiced ease. "Got your package, Whitmore?" Harker called down, his weathered face splitting into a knowing grin. "Came all the way from Boston, just like you ordered." Cole felt heat creep up his neck at the teasing tone, but before he could respond, the stagecoach door swung open. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a hand appeared, slender, feminine, but not delicate. The fingers were long and capable-looking, the nails trimmed short and practical. That hand gripped the doorframe with confidence, and then she stepped down. Amelia Grant was not what Cole had expected, though he couldn't have said exactly what he had been expecting. She was tall for a woman, perhaps 5 feet 7 inches, with a straight posture that spoke of self-assurance rather than rigid propriety. Her traveling dress was a deep blue wool, well made but not fancy, with dust from the journey clinging to its hem. Dark brown hair was pulled back in a simple knot at the nape of her neck, and when her eyes met his, Cole felt the air leave his lungs in a rush he wasn't prepared for. Those eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds over the mountains, and they assessed him with the same directness he'd sensed in her letters. No coy glances, no false modesty. She looked at him the way a woman might look at a horse she was considering buying. Thorough, intelligent, measuring. "Mr. Whitmore?" she said, her voice clear and steady despite the long journey. "I'm Amelia Grant." Cole found his voice, though it came out rougher than he'd intended. "Miss Grant, welcome to Montana." He gestured awkwardly toward the ranch house. "Welcome home, I suppose." Something flickered across her face at that word. Home. But it was gone too quickly for him to interpret. She nodded once, then turned back to the stagecoach as Harker began unloading her belongings. "Just the 2 trunks and the carpet bag," she told the driver. "Thank you for your assistance during the journey." Cole moved forward to help, grabbing the first trunk as Harker lowered it down. The weight surprised him. It was substantial, packed full of whatever a woman brought when she left her entire life behind to marry a stranger. As he set it on the ground, the leather straps gave way with a snap that had clearly been waiting to happen for miles. The trunk's contents spilled across the dirt in a tumble of fabric, and Cole froze, staring. Books. Not the novels or poetry collections he might have expected, but thick medical texts with worn spines and dog-eared pages. Gray's Anatomy. Principles of Surgery. A Practical Guide to Pharmacology. Underneath the books, wrapped in canvas, metal instruments glinted in the afternoon sun. Scalpels, forceps, surgical scissors, each nestled in custom-fitted compartments. "Oh, damn it all," Amelia muttered, dropping to her knees beside the spilled trunk with a speed that sent her skirts billowing. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently, gathering the scattered items with obvious familiarity. "Please be careful with those. The instruments are quite sharp and rather expensive." Cole knelt beside her, his mind racing. "These are medical supplies." "Yes." She didn't look at him, focused on repacking the trunk with meticulous care. "I should have mentioned that in my letters. I served as a physician's assistant in Boston for 6 years. I have extensive training in surgery, pharmacology, and general medicine." "You should have mentioned—" Cole stopped, shaking his head in disbelief. "That seems like rather important information, Miss Grant." Now she did look at him, and there was something defiant in her gaze. "Would it have changed your mind about bringing me here?" "I don't," Cole started, then realized he didn't know how to answer that question. Would it have changed his mind? He'd been looking for a wife, not a physician's assistant. But as he stared at the medical texts and surgical tools, he felt something shift in his understanding of what he'd actually found. In Montana Territory, where the nearest real doctor was 2 days' ride away in Helena, where one bad fever or infected wound could kill a man before help arrived, where women died in childbirth and children succumbed to illnesses that back east might have been treatable. In this harsh, unforgiving land, he'd brought home something far more valuable than a wife. He'd brought home hope. "No," Cole said finally, his voice quiet but certain. "No, it wouldn't have changed my mind, but it does change what I understand about you and what you might be able to do here." Amelia's shoulders relaxed slightly, tension he hadn't realized she was carrying easing from her frame. "I want to be clear, Mr. Whitmore. I came here for the reasons I stated in my letters. I need a fresh start, and I believe I can be useful as your wife. But I cannot abandon my medical knowledge. If people need help, I will provide it. That is not negotiable." The way she said it, firm, unapologetic, made Cole's respect for her rise several notches. "Miss Grant, there are families within a day's ride of here who've lost children to scarlet fever, men who've died from wounds that festered, women who've bled out bringing new life into the world. If you can help even one of them, you'll be worth more than all the cattle in Montana." Something in her expression softened at that, a hint of surprise quickly masked. "Then we understand each other." "I suppose we do." Cole stood, offering her his hand to help her up. When she took it, her grip was firm and warm through the leather of his work glove. "Though I think we have a lot more understanding to do. Your letters told me you were practical and capable. They didn't mention you were exceptional." A flush crept across her cheeks, the first sign of vulnerability he'd seen from her. "I'm not exceptional, Mr. Whitmore. I'm simply trained. There's a difference." "Call me Cole," he said, surprising himself with the offer. "If we're going to be married, we should probably use given names." "Cole, then." She tested the name, her lips forming the single syllable carefully. "And you should call me Amelia." "Amelia." The name felt right in his mouth, substantial and real. "Let me get these trunks inside, then we should probably discuss the arrangements." "The arrangements?" Amelia's voice was carefully neutral. "Yes. Your letter mentioned a separate bedroom." Cole felt heat creep up his neck again. "I did. I meant what I said in that letter. I'm not expecting, that is, I don't assume." He stopped, frustrated with his own awkwardness. "This is a marriage of convenience, Miss Amelia. I won't force anything you're not willing to give." She studied him for a long moment, those gray eyes searching his face for something. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her because she nodded once. "Thank you. That's good to know." Harker, who'd been watching this exchange with obvious amusement while unhitching his team, called out, "You two planning to stand there talking all day, or should I plan on making camp? I've got a schedule to keep." "We're done, Harker," Cole said, hefting the now secured trunk. "Thanks for bringing her safe." "Wasn't me doing the protecting," Harker said with a laugh. "This one's got spine. Pulled a knife on a drunk in a station house in Helena who got a bit too friendly. Cool as you please, didn't even raise her voice. Just made it real clear she'd geld him if he took another step." Cole's eyebrows rose as he looked at Amelia, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "He was being inappropriate. I responded appropriately." "Remind me not to get on your bad side," Cole said, but he was grinning. The woman was full of surprises, and each one made him more curious about what he'd actually gotten himself into. They carried her belongings into the house, Cole trying to see his home through her eyes. It was a solid structure, 2 stories with 4 rooms upstairs and 3 down. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space, with a stone fireplace he'd built himself dominating one wall. The furniture was simple but well made. A table with 6 chairs, 2 armchairs by the fire, shelves lined with the books his mother had loved, and he'd kept after she died. "It's lovely," Amelia said, and he heard genuine appreciation in her voice. "You built this yourself?" "Most of it. Had help with the barn and the roof, but the rest I did over 3 years. Cole set her trunk down near the stairs. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right. It has a bed, a dresser, and a washstand. Not fancy, but it's private and warm. That's all I need." Amelia walked slowly through the main room, her fingers trailing over the table's surface, the back of one of the chairs. "How much land do you have?" 800 acres, give or take. About 200 head of cattle, a dozen horses. I've got 3 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse out back. Joe, Miguel, and Tommy. Good men, hard workers. They know you're coming, and they'll be respectful." Amelia nodded, still exploring the space. She stopped at the bookshelf, scanning the titles with interest. "Your mother's?" she asked, touching the spine of a volume of Emerson's essays. "How did you—" Cole started, then understood. The handwriting in the margins. She liked to make notes. She had good taste, and a questioning mind from what I can see. Amelia pulled out a volume of Shakespeare's plays, flipping through it with obvious familiarity. "My mother loved Shakespeare. She used to read to me when I was young." "Used to?" Cole heard the past tense, understood its significance. "She died when I was 14, childbirth. The baby died too, a boy." Amelia's voice was flat, factual, but Cole heard the old pain underneath. The doctor who attended her was drunk. He didn't sterilize his instruments properly. She developed puerperal fever. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but Cole meant them. "It's why I trained in medicine." Amelia closed the book, sliding it carefully back into place. "I decided that if I ever had the power to prevent that kind of senseless death, I would use it. So when my father's friend, Dr. Harrison, offered to train me as his assistant, I accepted. Spent 6 years learning everything he could teach me." "What happened then?" "Why did you leave?" Cole asked, then immediately regretted it when he saw her face close off. "I'm sorry. You don't have to answer that." "No, it's a fair question." Amelia turned to face him fully, her shoulders squared as if preparing for battle. "Dr. Harrison died last year. His practice was taken over by his son, who had different ideas about women in medicine. He made it clear my services were no longer wanted. At the same time, my uncle began pressing me to accept a marriage proposal from one of his business associates. A man of means, but—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Questionable character. When I refused, my uncle became increasingly insistent. I realized I needed to leave Boston entirely. Your advertisement seemed like providence." There was more to the story. Cole could hear it in the careful way she selected her words, see it in the tension that crept back into her shoulders. But he didn't press. They'd have time to learn each other's secrets. "Well," he said, trying to lighten the mood, "providence or desperation, I'm glad you answered the ad. This territory needs people like you." "People like me?" Amelia asked, one eyebrow rising slightly. "Smart, capable. Brave enough to start over in a place where everything is uncertain." Cole moved toward the kitchen area. "Speaking of which, are you hungry? It's a few hours until dinner, but I can make coffee, and there's bread from yesterday. Coffee would be wonderful. I haven't had a decent cup since leaving Boston. Amelia followed him, watching as he worked the pump at the sink to fill the kettle. You have running water. That's impressive. Spring-fed from up in the hills. Took me a month to dig the line and lay the pipes, but it was worth it. Cole set the kettle on the stove, adding wood to bring the fire back to life. In winter, we have to keep a fire going constantly, or the pipes freeze. That's one of the hardest things about Montana winters. They're brutal. Temperature can drop to 30 below, snowdrifts can bury the barn. You have to plan for being snowed in for weeks at a time. I'm not afraid of winter, Amelia said quietly. I'm afraid of being useless. Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he recognized in those storm-gray eyes. It was the same thing he saw in his own reflection sometimes. The desperate need to matter, to build something that would last, to leave some kind of mark on the world that said I was here, and it meant something. You won't be useless here, he said, his voice rough with sincerity. I can promise you that. The coffee boiled, and they sat at the table with mugs of the bitter brew and thick slices of bread with butter. For a while they didn't talk, just sat in companionable silence as the afternoon light slanted through the windows. Finally, Amelia spoke. We should discuss the practical arrangements. You mentioned in your letter that you'd arranged for a minister to come perform the ceremony. When should I expect that? Reverend Walsh will be here in 3 days. He rides a circuit through the territory, preaching and performing ceremonies. I sent word when I got your last letter confirming you were coming. Cole wrapped his hands around his mug, studying the dark liquid. But if you need more time, if you want to wait longer before we make it official, no! Amelia's response was immediate and firm. No, 3 days is fine. I came here to be your wife, Cole. Waiting won't change that. All right then. Cole nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of something in his chest that might have been anticipation or might have been terror. There's something else we should discuss. The ranch hands know you're coming, like I said, but the neighbors, there are 4 other families within riding distance. They'll want to meet you. News travels fast out here, and a new person is big news. I'd like to meet them, Amelia said, especially if they might need medical assistance. That's what I figured. Cole smiled slightly. Fair warning. They're going to be curious, probably nosy. Martha Henderson, who runs the ranch to the east with her husband Ben, is going to want to know everything about you. She means well, but she's got opinions about everything, and she's not shy about sharing them. I can handle curious neighbors. Amelia's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. I grew up in Boston society, remember? If I can survive tea parties with Brahmin matrons interrogating every aspect of my life, I can handle frontier ranchers. Cole laughed, surprised by the sound. When was the last time he'd laughed? You might be surprised. Martha Henderson makes Brahmin matrons look subtle. They talked for another hour as the afternoon faded toward evening, discussing the rhythms of ranch life, the work that needed doing, the challenges of the coming winter. Amelia asked intelligent questions about the livestock, the water rights, the relationships with neighboring ranches. Cole found himself explaining things he'd never had to put into words before, seeing his own life from a new angle through her queries. When the light began to fail, Cole showed her to her room upstairs. It was simple but clean, with a brass bed covered in quilts his mother had made, a sturdy dresser, and a washstand with a pitcher and basin. A window looked out over the eastern pastures, where the last light was painting the grass gold. I'll let you settle in, Cole said from the doorway. Dinner will be ready in about an hour. Nothing fancy, just stew and more bread. That sounds perfect. Amelia stood in the center of the room, her carpet bag in her hand, looking suddenly smaller and more vulnerable than she had all afternoon. Cole? Thank you. For being kind. For not making this harder than it has to be. Amelia. Cole waited until she looked at him. I know this is strange for both of us, but I meant what I said in my letters. I'm looking for a partner, not a servant. I want this to work. I'll do what I can to make sure it does. She nodded, and he thought he saw the sheen of tears in her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. I want that too. Cole left her to unpack, heading back downstairs to start dinner. As he chopped vegetables and stirred the pot of stew simmering on the stove, he found his mind wandering back to the image of those medical books and surgical instruments spilling from her trunk. Who was this woman he'd brought to his ranch? What had driven her from Boston, really? And what would it mean to have someone so capable, so educated, so clearly running from something, sharing his home? The sound of footsteps on the stairs brought him back to the present. Amelia had changed from her traveling dress into something simpler. A gray cotton dress with a white collar, her hair still pulled back but looser now, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She looked younger, somehow, less guarded. "Can I help?" she asked. "You don't have to. I want to." She moved to the sink without waiting for his agreement, beginning to pump water into a pot. "If we're going to be partners, I should start acting like it. Besides, I'm a decent cook. Dr. Harrison's housekeeper taught me. Said a physician should know how to nourish the body as well as cure it." They worked together in a rhythm that surprised Cole with its ease. Amelia proved to be more than a decent cook. She was efficient and knowledgeable, seasoning the stew with herbs from the dried bundles hanging near the stove, slicing bread with practiced precision, setting the table with simple grace. They ate as full darkness fell outside, the windows becoming mirrors reflecting the lamplight. The stew was better than anything Cole had made in months, rich and savory, the bread still warm enough to melt the butter. "This is good," Cole said, meaning both the food and the moment, the strange comfort of sharing a meal with someone after years of eating alone. "It is," Amelia agreed, and he thought she meant the same thing. After dinner, they sat by the fire while Amelia told him more about Boston, about the cases she'd assisted with, the techniques she'd learned. Cole found himself fascinated by the details of her work. The precision required, the problem-solving, the way she described saving lives with the same matter-of-fact tone he might use to describe fixing a broken fence. "The human body is remarkable," she said, staring into the flames. "It can endure incredible trauma and still heal, given the right conditions. But it can also fail completely from something as small as a splinter if infection sets in. The margin between life and death is often thinner than people realize." "Out here, that margin's even thinner," Cole said. "Last winter, Tom Reynolds, he ran the ranch about 10 miles north, died because a wound on his hand got infected. Just a cut from mending fence. Nothing that should have killed him. But it festered, and by the time anyone knew how bad it was, there was nothing to be done. He left behind a wife and 3 children. "Where are they now?" Amelia asked. The wife remarried in spring, Dan Porter, a widower from over by Helena. The children went with them. It was practical, necessary even. But those kids lost their father over something that probably could have been prevented with proper treatment. Amelia was quiet for a moment, her gray eyes reflecting the firelight. "I can't promise to save everyone, Cole. Medicine isn't magic. Sometimes the body fails despite our best efforts. But I can promise to try. Every time. For every person who needs help." "That's all anyone can ask," Cole said. The clock on the mantel chimed 9, and Amelia stifled a yawn. "I should probably sleep. It's been a very long day." "Of course." Cole stood when she did, suddenly awkward again. "If you need anything during the night, I'll be fine." She paused at the foot of the stairs, one hand on the railing. "Cole, I know I already said this, but thank you for giving me this chance. I won't disappoint you." "I don't think you could if you tried," Cole said honestly. He watched her climb the stairs, listened to the sound of her door closing, the creak of floorboards as she moved around the room above his head. Then he banked the fire, checked the locks, and went to his own room, the one at the back of the house that had been his parents' and became his after they died. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling, the wind moving through the grass outside, and one new sound, the faint movement of another person living above him. It should have felt strange, intrusive even. Instead, it felt like something he'd been missing without realizing it. A presence, a purpose beyond mere survival. Hope. Soot. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity as Cole tried to prepare the ranch, and himself, for the wedding that would make Amelia permanently his wife. He threw himself into work, mending fences, checking on cattle, coordinating with his ranch hands to ensure everything was running smoothly. But his mind kept drifting back to the house, to the woman who was transforming it simply by being there. Amelia spent those days exploring the ranch, getting her bearings, and settling into the rhythms of frontier life. Cole would catch glimpses of her from the pastures, hanging laundry with efficient movements, tending the kitchen garden that had been neglected since his mother's death, organizing the pantry with systematic precision. On the second day, young Tommy, the youngest of his ranch hands at just 19, came limping into the barn where Cole was checking the horses. "Boss," Tommy said, his face twisted with pain, "I think I did something to my ankle, was moving hay bales and felt something pop." Cole's first instinct was worry. An injured hand couldn't work, and they couldn't afford to be short-handed with winter coming. But then he remembered. "Come on," he said, helping Tommy toward the house. "Let's have the lady take a look." They found Amelia in the kitchen, grinding something with a mortar and pestle. She looked up at their entrance, and her expression immediately shifted to professional assessment. "What happened?" she asked, already moving toward them. "Ankle," Tommy said. "Hurts like hell. Pardon my language, ma'am." "I've heard worse. Sit down." Amelia guided him to a chair with firm gentleness. "Let me see." Cole watched as she knelt beside Tommy, her hands moving over the injured ankle with confident expertise. She asked questions: how it happened, what kind of pain, could he move it, all while carefully removing Tommy's boot and examining the swelling joint. "It's not broken," she said finally. "You've strained the ligaments. It's going to be painful for a few days, but with proper care, you'll heal." She stood, moving to where her medical supplies had been arranged on a shelf near the kitchen. "I'm going to wrap it to provide support, and I'll give you willow bark tea for the pain. You'll need to stay off it as much as possible for at least 3 days." "3 days?" Tommy protested. "But ma'am, we've got work." "The work will still be there after your ankle heals," Amelia said firmly, returning with bandages and a small packet. "If you try to work on it now, you'll make it worse and be laid up for weeks instead of days. Is that what you want?" "No, ma'am," Tommy muttered, properly chastised. Cole hid a smile as he watched Amelia wrap the ankle with practiced efficiency, explaining to Tommy how to recognize signs of worsening injury and what to do if the swelling didn't reduce. This was the woman he'd seen glimpses of in her letters, confident, competent, brooking no nonsense when it came to health and safety. "Thank you, Mrs. Tommy stopped, flustered. "I mean, Miss Grant, or what should I call you?" "Amelia is fine," she said, securing the bandage. "And in 2 days, it will indeed be Mrs. Whitmore. For now, Miss Grant works." After Tommy had limped off to the bunkhouse with strict instructions to rest and a packet of willow bark tea, Cole lingered in the kitchen. "That was impressive." "That was basic care," Amelia corrected, but he could see she was pleased, "though I'm glad I could help. He seems like a good young man." "He is. They all are." Cole hesitated, then decided to voice what he'd been thinking. "Amelia, I've been considering something. The supply room off the back of the house, it's full of junk right now, things I should have cleared out years ago. But it has a good window, a door to the outside, space for a table and shelves. If you wanted, we could turn it into a proper clinic, a place where people could come for treatment." Amelia's eyes widened. "You'd do that?" "Why wouldn't I? You have skills this whole territory needs. Seems foolish not to give you a proper place to use them." Cole moved toward the window, looking out over the ranch. "Word's going to spread quickly that we have someone with medical training here. People will come. They should have somewhere to go that's set up properly." "That's very generous." Amelia's voice was soft. "Most men wouldn't want their wives spending time treating strangers." "I'm not most men." Cole turned back to face her. "And you're not just my wife. You're a physician's assistant with 6 years of training. That matters. That should matter." Something in Amelia's expression shifted, a wall dropping away to reveal vulnerability underneath. "You have no idea what that means to me. To be seen as more than just a woman someone sent for." "You're more," Cole said simply. "I knew that the moment your trunk spilled open and I saw those medical books. And now that I've seen you work, I'm certain of it." They stood there for a moment, something unspoken hanging in the air between them. Respect, yes, but also the first fragile threads of something deeper. Then Amelia broke eye contact, clearing her throat. "I should start planning how to organize a clinic. I'll need to inventory my supplies, figure out what additional materials I'll need to order." "Make a list," Cole said. "Next supply run to Helena, we'll get whatever you need." The day of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the kind of Montana morning where the sun glinted off frost-touched grass and breath steamed in the air. Cole woke early, as always, but instead of heading straight out to start his work, he took extra time shaving carefully, putting on the clean clothes he'd set aside, trying to calm the nervous energy thrumming through his veins. It's just a formality, he told himself. Nothing's really changing. But that was a lie, and he knew it. Everything was changing. Had already changed the moment Amelia stepped off that stagecoach. Reverend Walsh arrived mid-morning, a thin man with kind eyes and a habit of quoting scripture at unexpected moments. He'd brought his wife, Eleanor, a plump woman with a warm smile who immediately took charge of the kitchen, insisting on preparing a proper wedding meal. The ceremony was held in the main room of the house, with Cole's 3 ranch hands and the Walsh couple as witnesses. Amelia appeared at the top of the stairs wearing a simple dress of dark green wool that brought out the color in her gray eyes. She'd arranged her hair carefully, and she carried a small bouquet of late-season wildflowers that Eleanor must have helped her gather. She was beautiful, not in the delicate ornamental way that society ladies cultivated, but in something more essential, the beauty of strength and intelligence and quiet courage. Cole's breath caught as she descended the stairs, her eyes meeting his with that same direct gaze that had struck him on the first day. No artifice, no games, just honesty. The ceremony was brief, Reverend Walsh's words familiar and comforting. Do you, Cole Whitmore, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part? I do, Cole said, his voice steady. And do you, Amelia Grant, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part? I do. Amelia's voice was clear, unwavering. Cole slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his mother's ring, which had been sitting in a drawer since her death. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for this moment, for this woman. By the power vested in me by the territory of Montana and the grace of God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Walsh smiled. You may kiss your bride, young man. Cole hesitated, suddenly aware of the gulf between the ceremony's words and the reality of their arrangement. But Amelia solved the problem by stepping forward and placing a chaste kiss on his cheek, her hand resting briefly on his arm. Thank you, she whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear, for making me feel like this is real. It is real, Cole whispered back, surprising himself with the truth of it, every word of it. The wedding meal was simple but festive, Eleanor Walsh having worked miracles with the supplies in Cole's pantry. They ate roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden, and a dried apple pie that was surprisingly good. The conversation flowed easily, the Walsh couple sharing news from their circuit, births, deaths, marriages, the small dramas that made up frontier life. As the afternoon wore on and the Walsh couple prepared to depart for their next stop, Eleanor pulled Amelia aside. Cole, helping Reverend Walsh hitch his team, couldn't hear what was said, but he saw Amelia nod, saw Eleanor pat her hand maternally, saw something in his new wife's expression that might have been gratitude or might have been unshed tears. Then they were gone, and Cole and Amelia were alone in the house that was now officially theirs, together. Well, Amelia said, standing in the doorway watching the wagon disappear down the road, I suppose that makes it official. I suppose it does. Cole came to stand beside her. Mrs. Whitmore. That's going to take some getting used to, she admitted. The name, I mean. For both of us. Cole glanced at her. Do you want to keep using Grant for your medical work? Some women do that, keep their maiden names for professional purposes. Amelia considered this, her gray eyes thoughtful. No, I left Amelia Grant behind in Boston. Whatever I build here, I want to build as Amelia Whitmore, as your wife and partner. The words should have been simple, practical, but they lodged in Cole's chest with an unexpected weight, a significance he hadn't been prepared for. That evening, they sat by the fire again, but something had shifted between them. The wedding ceremony, brief as it was, had created a bond that was more than just legal. They were tied together now, their futures intertwined in ways that went beyond convenience or practicality. "Tell me about your parents," Amelia said suddenly. "You mentioned they died of typhoid, but you've never really talked about them." Cole was quiet for a moment, old grief stirring. "My father was a dreamer. He dragged us out here when I was 15, convinced he could build an empire raising cattle. My mother thought he was crazy, but she loved him, so she came anyway. They worked themselves to the bone for 15 years building this place up from nothing." "And then they died," Amelia said softly. "And then they died." Cole stared into the flames. 3 years ago. There was an outbreak of typhoid that swept through the territory. They got it from contaminated water at a neighboring ranch. My father went first, and my mother, she just gave up after that. Stopped fighting. She loved him so much that losing him broke something in her. "I'm sorry." Amelia's hand found his, her fingers threading through his. The touch was comforting, not romantic, but it meant something. "That must have been terribly hard." "It taught me something," Cole said, his voice rough. "It taught me that love like that, the kind that consumes you, the kind that makes someone else your whole world, it's dangerous. When you lose that person, you lose yourself too. My mother basically died of a broken heart. I swore I'd never let that happen to me." "Is that why you wanted a practical marriage?" Amelia asked. "To protect yourself?" "Yes." Cole looked at her, this woman he'd promised to honor and cherish just hours ago. "I'm not looking for grand passion, Amelia. I'm looking for partnership, respect, shared purpose. Something stable that won't destroy me if it ends." Amelia was quiet for a long moment, her thumb tracing circles on the back of his hand. "I understand that. More than you might think. I've seen what happens when women lose themselves in men, when their entire identity becomes tied to someone else. My mother did that. She loved my father so completely that when he started drinking after she died, when he let our home fall apart, I think part of her would have been heartbroken." "So we both know the risks," Cole said. "We do." Amelia squeezed his hand once, then released it. "Which is why this arrangement makes sense. Partnership without the danger of losing ourselves. Respect without the risk of heartbreak." "Exactly," Cole agreed. But as they sat there in the firelight, Cole felt a small voice in the back of his mind whispering that protection might come at a cost, that walls built to keep out pain might also keep out something else, something worth the risk. He ignored that voice. He was practical, sensible, careful. That's what had helped him survive out here. That's what would help them both survive whatever came next. Even if, when he finally went to bed that night and lay awake listening to Amelia moving around in the room above him, he couldn't quite convince himself that survival was all he wanted anymore. The first week of their marriage settled into a rhythm that surprised Cole with its naturalness. Amelia rose before dawn, as he did, and they'd share coffee in the quiet darkness before the day's work pulled them in different directions. She proved herself capable in ways that went far beyond her medical training, mending clothes with neat, efficient stitches, managing the household accounts with a head for numbers that put his own rough tallying to shame, even helping with the horses when the ranch hands needed an extra pair of hands. But it was her medical work that truly began to define her place in the territory. Word spread faster than wildfire through the scattered ranches and homesteads. There was a woman at the Whitmore place who knew medicine, real medicine, not just folk remedies and prayers. The first patient who came seeking help arrived on a gray November morning, barely a week after the wedding. Cole was in the barn when he heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching fast. He emerged to see Ben Henderson, their nearest neighbor, riding hard with something wrapped in a blanket clutched against his chest. "Cole!" Ben shouted, pulling his horse to a skidding stop. "Is it true? Your wife? She knows doctoring?" "She does," Cole said, already moving toward the house. "What happened?" "It's Sarah, my youngest." Ben's weathered face was tight with fear as he dismounted, cradling the bundle carefully. "She's burning with fever, been sick for 2 days now, and it's getting worse. Martha's beside herself with worry." Cole pushed open the door. "Amelia!" She appeared from the back room, the supply room that they'd spent the past 3 days converting into a proper clinic. Her hair was tied back with a kerchief, and her sleeves were rolled up, revealing arms already marked with the small cuts and bruises that came from moving heavy shelves and organizing supplies. "What's wrong?" she asked, but her eyes had already found the bundle in Ben's arms, and her expression shifted instantly to focused concern. "My daughter," Ben said. "She's 5 years old. High fever, won't eat, just lies there like—" His voice broke. "Bring her into the clinic." Amelia's voice was calm, authoritative. "Cole, I need you to pump fresh water and put a kettle on to boil. Ben, come with me." Cole did as instructed, his hands working automatically while his mind raced. He'd seen childhood fevers before, seen how quickly they could turn deadly, how many small graves dotted the territory's informal cemeteries. Please, he thought, surprising himself with the fervor of the prayer. Please let her be able to help. He brought the water to the clinic, finding Amelia bent over the examination table where little Sarah Henderson lay unwrapped from her blanket. The child's face was flushed, her breathing rapid and shallow. Amelia had one hand on Sarah's forehead, the other on her wrist, counting pulse beats while her eyes tracked the movement of the girl's chest. "How long has she had the fever?" Amelia asked, not looking up. "Started 2 nights ago," Ben said, wringing his hat in his hands. "Seemed like just a cold at first, but yesterday she got worse. This morning she wouldn't wake up properly, just sort of drifts in and out." Amelia nodded, her fingers moving to gently examine Sarah's neck, then carefully opening the child's mouth to look at her throat. "Has she been complaining of pain anywhere specific? Headache, stomach, throat?" "Her throat," Ben said. "Said it hurt to swallow yesterday." "I need more light," Amelia said. Cole immediately grabbed the lamp from the shelf, bringing it close. In the increased illumination, he saw Amelia's expression tighten as she examined Sarah's throat more carefully. "What is it?" Ben asked, fear making his voice sharp. "Her throat is badly inflamed with white patches on the tonsils. Combined with the high fever and lethargy, I believe she has a severe throat infection." Amelia straightened, her hands already moving to wash in the basin Cole had brought. "The good news is that I've seen this before and I know how to treat it. The bad news is that it's serious and she'll need careful nursing for the next several days." "Whatever it takes," Ben said immediately. "Just tell me what to do." "First, we need to bring down the fever." Amelia moved to her medical supplies, pulling out packets and bottles with practiced efficiency. "I'm going to make a solution of willow bark and feverfew to reduce the fever. We'll also need to keep her body cool with damp cloths. The throat infection requires careful treatment. I'll prepare a gargle solution of salt water and sage, and I have a tincture of echinacea that should help fight the infection." Cole watched as she worked, mixing compounds with precise measurements, explaining each step to Ben in clear, simple terms. There was no hesitation in her movements, no uncertainty. This was a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. "Ben, Amelia said as she prepared a dose of fever reducer. "I need you to tell Martha to prepare a room where Sarah can be kept quiet and cool. She'll need someone with her at all times for the next 3 days at least. The fever will likely get worse before it gets better, but if we're vigilant, she should recover fully." 3 days, Ben repeated. "Should I... Would you be willing to come stay with us? To watch over her?" Amelia glanced at Cole, a question in her eyes. He nodded immediately. "Whatever's needed." "I'll come," Amelia said. "Let me gather my supplies and I'll ride back with you. Cole, can you saddle my horse?" "Already on it," Cole said, heading for the barn. 20 minutes later, he watched Amelia ride off with Ben Henderson, her medical bag secured behind her saddle, her posture straight and confident despite the difficult task ahead. Cole stood in the yard long after they disappeared from view, feeling a strange mixture of pride and concern. She'd been his wife for barely a week, and already she was riding off to save lives. Amelia returned 3 days later at sunset, exhausted but triumphant. Cole saw her coming from the south pasture and immediately rode to meet her. She looked worn, dark circles under her eyes, her dress rumpled, her hair escaping from its pins. But when she saw him, she smiled. "Sarah?" Cole asked as they rode side by side back to the house. "Fever broke this morning. She's weak but eating, and the throat infection is resolving. She'll recover fully." Amelia's voice was hoarse with tiredness, but satisfied. "Martha Henderson is a good nurse. She followed every instruction precisely. That made all the difference. You did it, Cole said, something warm expanding in his chest. You saved her life. I treated her illness, Amelia corrected, but he could see the pleasure in her expression. But yes, she would likely have died without intervention. The infection was severe. Back at the house, Cole insisted Amelia rest while he prepared dinner. She protested weakly but gave in when he pointed out that she looked ready to collapse. He made a simple meal of soup and bread, bringing it to her by the fire where she'd fallen asleep in one of the armchairs. Amelia, he said softly, touching her shoulder, you need to eat. She woke slowly, blinking up at him with confused gray eyes before memory returned. I fell asleep. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Cole handed her the bowl. You've been up for 3 days straight. I'm surprised you made it home before collapsing. They ate in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the house warm and peaceful. When Amelia had finished, she set the bowl aside and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Thank you, she said quietly, for supporting what I did, for not questioning my need to go or suggesting I should stay here instead. Not every man would have done that. Not every man would be lucky enough to be married to someone who can do what you did. Cole met her eyes. I meant what I said before, Amelia. Your skills matter. They should be used. I'm not going to stand in the way of that. Something shifted in her expression, vulnerability mixed with gratitude. I think we might actually make this work, this partnership of ours. I think we might, Cole agreed. As November deepened into December, their partnership did indeed begin to work in ways that surprised them both. Amelia saw patients several times a week, mostly minor injuries and illnesses, but each case reinforced her value to the community. Cole found himself taking pride in introducing her as my wife, who has medical training, watching neighbors' faces light up with relief at knowing help was finally available. They developed their own rhythms and routines. Mornings began with coffee together, reviewing the day's work. Amelia would update Cole on her patients, and he'd share information about the ranch operations. They'd discovered they both enjoyed discussion and debate, arguing good-naturedly over dinner about everything from politics to philosophy, their conversations ranging far beyond the practical concerns of frontier life. It was during one of these evening discussions that Cole first realized how much he'd come to depend on her presence. They were sitting by the fire, as had become their custom, discussing a book they'd both read, one of his mother's favorites that Amelia had discovered on the shelf. The protagonist is fundamentally selfish, Amelia was arguing, her eyes bright with the pleasure of debate. Every choice he makes is motivated by what benefits him, even when he claims otherwise. That's not selfishness, that's self-preservation, Cole countered. He's trying to survive in impossible circumstances. You can't fault someone for that. I'm not faulting him for surviving. I'm faulting him for pretending his choices are noble when they're actually self-serving. If he'd just admit he's acting out of self-interest, I'd respect him more. Amelia leaned forward, gesturing with the hand not holding her teacup. Honesty about one's motivations is crucial. Otherwise, you're just lying to yourself and everyone else. Is that what you think I'm doing? Cole asked, the words coming out before he'd fully thought them through. With this marriage? Lying to myself about my motivations? Amelia stilled, her expression becoming guarded. I don't know. Are you? Cole considered the question seriously. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. A practical partnership, someone to help run the ranch, companionship without the danger of real attachment. But lately I've been wondering if I was lying to myself about that last part. What do you mean? Amelia's voice was soft, careful. I mean that I'm starting to realize that protecting yourself from pain also means protecting yourself from other things, good things. Cole set down his own cup, his hands restless. I told you about my parents, about how my mother died of heartbreak. I was so afraid of ending up like her that I convinced myself I didn't want or need that kind of connection. But being married to you, even in this practical arrangement, has made me wonder if I was wrong. Amelia was quiet for a long moment, her gray eyes searching his face. What are you saying, Cole? I'm saying that I value you, not just for your medical skills or your help with the ranch. I value talking to you, hearing your thoughts, coming home and knowing you'll be here. I value your company. He paused, then added carefully, And I think maybe I was wrong to assume that valuing someone necessarily leads to the kind of all-consuming attachment that destroyed my mother. Cole. Amelia set down her own cup, twisting her wedding ring, his mother's ring, around her finger. I need to tell you something about why I really left Boston, about what I was running from. You don't have to see. I do. She took a deep breath. I told you that my uncle wanted me to marry one of his business associates. What I didn't tell you was that the man, Charles Blackwood, was dangerous. He had a reputation for controlling behavior, for isolating his previous wives from their families and friends. His first wife died under suspicious circumstances, officially ruled an accident, but there were rumors. Cole felt anger rising in his chest. And your uncle wanted you to marry him anyway? My uncle owed him money, a lot of money. The marriage was supposed to settle the debt. Amelia's voice was flat, factual, but Cole could hear the old fear underneath. When I refused, Blackwood became persistent. He started showing up at Dr. Harrison's office, at my home, making it clear that he wouldn't accept my refusal. That's when I saw your advertisement. It felt like providence, a way to escape completely, to become someone else in a place where Blackwood couldn't follow. Did he know you were leaving? Cole asked. Not initially, but my uncle would have told him by now. He'll know I came west, probably even know I answered a mail-order bride advertisement. Amelia finally looked at him, and in her eyes he saw a vulnerability that made his chest ache. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel obligated to protect me from something that might never materialize. For all I know, Blackwood has forgotten about me, found some other woman to pursue. But if he hasn't, if he comes looking, I wanted you to know the truth. Cole stood, moving to kneel beside her chair so they were at eye level. Amelia, listen to me. You are my wife. That means something to me, arrangement or not. If this Blackwood shows up here, he'll have to go through me to get to you, and I promise you, that won't be easy. Tears shone in her eyes. I don't want you to feel obligated. It's not obligation. Cole took her hands in his, feeling how cold her fingers were despite the fire's warmth. It's care. I care about you, Amelia. I care about your safety, your happiness, your right to live free from fear. If that makes our arrangement less practical and more complicated, then so be it. A tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. I care about you too, she whispered, more than I expected to, more than I probably should, given our agreement. Maybe our agreement was short-sighted, Cole said, his thumbs rubbing gentle circles on the backs of her hands. Maybe we were both so focused on protecting ourselves that we didn't consider what we might actually want. What do you want, Cole? Amelia asked, her voice barely audible. I want this to be real, he admitted. I want whatever's growing between us to be allowed to grow. I want to stop being so damn careful all the time and just see where this goes. Amelia let out a shaky breath, half laugh, half sob. That's terrifying. I know. Cole smiled slightly. But maybe it's worth being terrified if it means we get to actually live instead of just surviving. She freed one hand to touch his face, her palm warm against his cheek. I left Boston looking for safety and stability. I never expected to find this, you. I advertised for a practical wife. I never expected to find someone who makes me want to be braver than I am. Cole turned his head slightly, pressing a kiss to her palm. So what do we do now? Don't know, Amelia said honestly. Take it slowly. See how we feel. Try to be honest with each other instead of pretending we're not affected. I can do that. Cole stood, gently pulling her up with him. Starting with this. I'm going to kiss you properly. Not a wedding peck on the cheek, but a real kiss. And if you don't want that, tell me now. Amelia's answer was to step closer, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. I want that. So Cole kissed his wife for the first time, really kissed her, and felt something inside him shift and settle into place. Her lips were soft, her response tentative at first, and then more confident. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. Well, Amelia said, a hint of humor in her voice. That was decidedly impractical. Cole laughed, the sound surprised out of him. Completely. Want to be impractical again? Very much, she said, and kissed him. December brought the first serious snowfall, transforming the Montana landscape into something both beautiful and treacherous. Cole taught Amelia how to prepare for winter storms, how to read the sky for approaching weather, how to ensure the livestock were protected and the woodpile was stocked. She absorbed the lessons with the same focused intelligence she brought to everything, asking questions, taking mental notes, adapting quickly to the demands of frontier winters. Their relationship continued to deepen in ways both large and small. Cole moved some of his belongings into Amelia's room, gradually, tentatively, both of them navigating this new intimacy with care. They were still learning each other, still discovering what it meant to be not just partners, but lovers, not just practical companions, but people genuinely invested in each other's happiness. One bitter cold evening in mid-December, they were preparing to settle in for the night when they heard desperate pounding on the door. Cole grabbed his rifle by reflex, moving to answer while Amelia hung back, alert and ready. He opened the door to find Miguel, one of his ranch hands, supporting another man. A stranger Cole had never seen before, half frozen and barely conscious. "Found him about a mile out," Miguel said, his breath steaming in the frigid air. "He was trying to make it here on foot, kept saying he had to warn you about something." "Get him inside," Cole ordered, helping Miguel drag the man toward the fire. "Amelia," but she was already there, her medical bag in hand, her expression focused. "Get his outer clothes off carefully. Don't rub the skin if there's frostbite. Miguel, bring blankets, warm ones. Cole, I need warm water, not hot, and some of that whiskey from the cupboard." They worked together to treat the stranger, a man perhaps in his 40s, with a weathered face and ice in his beard. Amelia examined him methodically, checking for frostbite, hypothermia, other injuries. Cole watched her work, marveling again at her competence, the way she could shift instantly from wife to physician. "He'll be all right," she said finally, after they'd gotten him wrapped in blankets near the fire with warm liquid starting to bring his temperature back up. "Mild frostbite on his fingers and toes, but no permanent damage if we're careful. He's mostly just exhausted and half frozen." "Who is he?" Miguel asked. "Why was he trying to reach the ranch?" As if in answer, the stranger's eyes fluttered open. He looked around wildly for a moment before focusing on Cole. "Whitmore? Cole Whitmore?" "That's me," Cole said, kneeling beside him. "Who are you? What were you trying to warn me about?" "Name's Jim Carson. I was a ranch hand over in Wyoming territory." The man's voice was rough, his words coming slowly as if it hurt to speak. "About 3 weeks ago, a man came through asking questions. Rich man, fancy clothes, traveling with hired guns. He was looking for a woman, described her down to the color of her eyes. Said she'd run off and he was bringing her back." Cole felt ice that had nothing to do with the temperature settle in his gut. He looked at Amelia, saw her face had gone pale. "What was this man's name?" she asked, though Cole could tell she already knew. "Blackwood," Carson said. "Charles Blackwood. And ma'am, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but he's coming here. He knows where you are." The room fell silent, except for the crackle of the fire. Cole saw Amelia's hands clench in her lap, saw her straighten her spine with visible effort. "How long until he arrives?" Cole asked, his voice deadly calm. "That's why I rode so hard, tried to make it through the storm," Carson said. "I overheard him saying he'd be leaving Wyoming in a week, heading this way. That was 2 weeks ago. Given the snow in the distance, I'd say you have maybe 3-4 days before he shows up." "Why warn us?" Amelia asked quietly. "You don't know me. Why risk yourself?" Carson's expression hardened. "Because I saw what happened to his first wife back when I worked a ranch near their place in Philadelphia. Saw the bruises she tried to hide, heard the way he talked to her. When she died, I didn't believe it was an accident. Nobody did, but he had money and influence, so nothing came of it." He looked directly at Amelia. "When I heard him talking about tracking you down, heard the way he spoke about you like you were property. He meant to reclaim. I knew I had to warn you. Nobody deserves that." "Thank you," Amelia said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for risking yourself for a stranger." "What do we do?" Miguel asked, looking between Cole and Amelia. "Do we run? Try to get ahead of him?" "We don't run," Cole said flatly. "This is our home, our land. If Blackwood wants to come here and make trouble, He'll find out what happens to men who threaten what's mine. Cole, Amelia started. No. He turned to her, taking her hands in his. You are my wife, Amelia. By law, by choice, by every measure that matters. Blackwood has no claim on you, no right to pursue you, and I'll be damned if I let him intimidate you or make you feel unsafe in your own home. He's dangerous, she said, fear evident in her eyes. He has money, hired guns, and I have every neighboring rancher within a day's ride who'll stand with us if we ask. Cole's jaw set stubbornly. We're not running, Amelia. We're standing our ground. He's right, Miguel said quietly. This territory, we look after our own. Word goes out that someone's threatening Mrs. Whitmore. Every able man around will come armed and ready. Amelia looked between them, tears shining in her eyes. I never wanted to bring this trouble to you, any of you. You didn't bring trouble, Cole said firmly. Blackwood brought trouble. You brought healing, help, hope. There's a difference. She pulled him close, burying her face in his chest. Cole wrapped his arms around her, feeling her trembling despite her attempts to stay composed. Over her head, he looked at Miguel. Tomorrow morning, soon as it's light, I want you to ride to the Henderson place, then the Porter Ranch, the McLaren spread, every neighbor we have. Tell them what's coming. Tell them we need everyone who can hold a rifle to be ready. And me? Amelia asked, her voice muffled against his shirt. You prepare the clinic, Cole said. Because if Blackwood brings hired guns looking for a fight, there's going to be wounded that need treatment, including, if he's stupid enough to push this, Blackwood himself. She pulled back to look at him, something fierce in her expression now mixing with the fear. I'll be ready. The next 3 days were a flurry of preparation. Carson, once he'd recovered enough to move, proved invaluable. He knew Blackwood's methods, his habits, the kind of men he hired. He helped Cole and the ranch hands fortify the property, reinforcing the barn doors, setting up defensive positions, planning sight lines and escape routes. Meanwhile, neighbors began arriving in response to Miguel's summons. Ben Henderson came with 3 grown sons, all carrying rifles. Dan Porter brought 2 ranch hands and his wife Maggie, who insisted on staying to help Amelia with medical preparations. The McLaren family, the Johnsons, the Reeves. By the end of the second day, there were nearly 20 armed men camped around the Whitmore Ranch, ready to defend it. I had no idea, Amelia said, looking out at the gathering from the clinic window. I didn't realize how many people would come. You've treated half their families, Martha Henderson said, helping organize medical supplies. You set Tom McLaren's broken leg so well he walks without a limp. You saved my Sarah's life. You helped deliver Maggie Porter's baby when it was coming breech. Did you think people would forget that? I was just doing what any physician would do, Amelia protested. Any physician would charge fees most folks out here can't afford, Martha said bluntly. You've asked for nothing but supplies, and half the time you don't even ask for that. People remember kindness, Amelia. They remember when someone helps without expectation of return. That's why they're here. Cole found Amelia that evening in the clinic, sitting at her work table with her head in her hands. He closed the door quietly behind him. Hey, he said softly. You all right? I'm terrified, she admitted without looking up. I'm terrified that people are going to get hurt because of me. That you're going to get hurt because of me. That I made a terrible mistake thinking I could escape my past by running west. Cole moved to sit beside her, pulling her against his side. Listen to me. Whatever happens tomorrow or the next day, or whenever Blackwood arrives, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong by refusing to marry a dangerous man. You didn't do anything wrong by seeking safety. And you sure as hell didn't do anything wrong by building a life here, by helping people, by becoming someone this community values and wants to protect. But if someone dies, then it will be Blackwood's fault for coming here with violence in mind. Cole tilted her face up to meet his eyes. Amelia, I need you to hear this. I'm not fighting for you out of obligation or because we made some arrangement. I'm fighting for you because you're my wife and I love you. Her breath caught. What? I love you, Cole repeated, the words feeling both terrifying and right. I know we said this was practical, that we'd protect ourselves from getting too attached, but I failed completely at that. I love your intelligence, your compassion, your strength. I love the way you argue with me about books and the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating on something difficult. I love that you came west willing to start over, and I love what you've built here in just 2 months. I love you, Amelia. All of you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too, she whispered. I think I started falling in love with you that first day, when you looked at my medical books and saw value instead of oddity, when you supported my work instead of trying to limit it. I've been terrified to admit it, but Cole, I love you so much it scares me. Then we're both terrified together, he said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. But at least we're honest about it now. They held each other as darkness fell outside, knowing that tomorrow might bring violence and danger, but facing it together with truth between them instead of carefully maintained distance. On the afternoon of the third day, a rider came fast from the east, young Tommy, who'd volunteered to watch the approach road from a distant ridge. They're coming, he shouted, pulling his horse to a sliding stop in the yard. 6 men on horseback, maybe 2 miles out. The one in front is dressed fancy, riding like he owns the territory. That's Blackwood, Carson confirmed grimly. Always did ride like he was better than everyone else. Cole felt his heart rate increase, but kept his voice calm. Everyone to positions. Remember, we hold defensive ground. Nobody shoots unless they shoot first, but be ready. Miguel, you're with me at the front. Ben, take your sons and cover the barn. Dan, the east approach. Keep communication lines open. He turned to Amelia, who stood in the clinic doorway with her medical bag ready. Stay inside. Don't come out no matter what you hear unless someone's wounded and needs treatment. Cole, she started. Please, he said, gripping her shoulders. Please stay safe. I just told you I love you. I'd really like the chance to tell you that again tomorrow. She kissed him hard, desperately. You better survive this, Cole Whitmore, because I'm not done with you yet. Then she was gone, back into the clinic, and Cole was moving to the front of the house where he could see the approach road. Around him, neighbors took up positions. Men who'd answered the call to defend one of their own, rifles ready but held low, non-threatening but prepared. The riders appeared in the distance, silhouetted against the winter sky. 6 men, as Tommy had said, riding with purpose. As they drew closer, Cole could make out details. 5 men dressed in the rough gear of hired guns, hard-faced and alert. And at the front, Charles Blackwood. He was exactly as Carson had described, fancy-dressed even for travel, sitting his horse with the arrogant posture of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. When he was perhaps 50 yards out, he pulled his mount to a stop, surveying the scene with obvious displeasure. Well, Blackwood said, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air, quite the welcoming party. Tell me, which of you rustics is Cole Whitmore? I am, Cole said, stepping forward but staying behind the porch railing. And you're trespassing on my land. Your land? Blackwood's smile was cold. How quaint. I'm Charles Blackwood from Philadelphia. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't have anything that belongs to you, Cole said flatly. So I suggest you turn around and ride back the way you came. I'm talking about Amelia Grant, Blackwood said, his tone sharpening. She came here under false pretenses, running from obligations in Boston. I'm here to bring her home. Amelia Whitmore, Cole corrected with emphasis, is my wife. She has no obligations to you or anyone else in Boston, and she is home. Blackwood's expression darkened. Your wife. How convenient. Tell me, did she mention that her uncle owes me a substantial sum? That marriage to me was the agreed-upon settlement? I don't care what her uncle agreed to. Amelia made her own choice, and she chose to marry me. Cole's hand rested casually near his holstered pistol. Now, I've been polite, Blackwood, but my patience is running out. Leave. Now. I don't think you understand who you're dealing with, Blackwood said, his voice going cold. I have resources, connections, influence. I will make your life hell if you don't turn her over. See, that's where you made your mistake, Cole said. You're threatening me on my own land, in front of my neighbors and friends. You might have influence in Philadelphia, but out here, you're just another man who thinks money gives him the right to do whatever he wants. Is that so? Blackwood gestured to his hired guns. I brought 5 armed men. I count perhaps 20 of you. Those aren't good odds for you, Whitmore. You might want to count again. Ben Henderson called from his position by the barn. "And consider that every man here knows this land, knows how to shoot, and has a personal reason to be here. Your hired guns? They're just doing a job. We're protecting family." Blackwood's jaw tightened with anger. "Amelia," he shouted toward the house, "I know you can hear me. Come out here and we can settle this without violence. I'm willing to be reasonable." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the clinic door opened and Amelia stepped out, her spine straight, her chin raised. Cole wanted to order her back inside, but knew better. This was her fight too, her choice to make. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice cold and clear, "I am not now, nor have I ever been, your property or your obligation. My uncle had no right to promise me to you. I refused your proposal repeatedly in Boston, and I am refusing you again now. I am married to Cole Whitmore. This is my home, and you need to leave." "Amelia, be reasonable," Blackwood started. "No." She cut him off, stepping to the porch rail beside Cole. "You be reasonable. I don't want you. I never wanted you. I heard the rumors about your first wife, Mr. Blackwood. I saw the way you tried to control my movements, my associations, my life before I'd even agreed to marry you. I know exactly what kind of man you are. So hear me clearly. I would rather die on this frontier than live one day as your wife." Blackwood's face flushed with rage. "You ungrateful! You think you can talk to me this way? You think this cowboy and his rustic friends can protect you from me?" "I think," Cole said quietly, "that you're about 5 seconds from finding out exactly what we're willing to do to protect our own. Last chance, Blackwood. Right away." Instead of responding, Blackwood made a fatal mistake. His hand moved toward his coat, reaching for what must have been a weapon. Instantly, every rifle in the yard rose, trained on him and his men. "Don't," Cole said, his voice deadly. "Don't make me kill you on my own front porch." Blackwood froze, finally seeming to understand that he'd miscalculated badly. His hired guns, seeing themselves surrounded and outmatched, made no move to help him. One of them even raised his hand slowly away from his weapons. "We don't want trouble," that hired gun said carefully. "We were told this was a simple retrieval job. Nobody said anything about a fight." "Smart man," Ben Henderson called. You other 4 as smart as your friend?" 3 more of the hired guns raised their hands. The 5th, younger and more foolish than the others, made a grab for his pistol. He never cleared leather. 3 shots rang out simultaneously, Cole's, Ben's, and Miguel's, and the young man fell from his horse with a cry, clutching his arm and shoulder. "Non-fatal shots," Cole noted with grim satisfaction. "Warning shots." The sharp report of gunfire still hung in the air when Amelia pushed past Cole, medical bag already in hand, moving toward the wounded man with the focused determination he'd come to recognize. She was a healer before anything else, even when treating someone who'd come to do her harm. "Let her through," Cole ordered, keeping his gun trained on Blackwood. "Anyone tries to interfere with her treating him, they'll get worse than a flesh wound." Amelia knelt beside the fallen man, her hands already working to assess the damage. "You're lucky," she said coolly as she examined his wounds. "The bullet went through the shoulder muscle cleanly, and the arm wound is superficial. You'll live, though it's going to hurt considerably for the next few weeks." "You're treating me?" the young man gasped, his face pale with shock and pain. "But I was trying to shoot my husband. Yes, I noticed." Amelia's tone was arctic as she worked. "I'm treating you because that's what I do. I treat wounded people, regardless of whether they deserve it. But make no mistake, you came here to do harm, and you're fortunate that the men protecting this ranch have better aim and more mercy than you showed." Cole felt pride swell in his chest watching her work, even as he kept his attention on Blackwood, who had gone very still and very quiet as he watched the scene unfold. The man's expression had shifted from rage to something closer to shocked calculation. He was finally understanding that he'd walked into a situation far beyond his control. "Seems your hired guns aren't very loyal," Cole observed, noting that the 4 uninjured men had dismounted at Ben Henderson's orders and were allowing themselves to be disarmed without resistance. "Or very competent." "This isn't over, Whitmore," Blackwood said, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "I have lawyers, resources." "Then use them," Cole interrupted. Take me to court if you think you have any legal standing. Spoiler, you don't. Amelia is my lawfully wedded wife, married by a licensed minister, properly registered in the territorial records. She came here of her own free will, married me of her own free will, and chooses to stay here of her own free will. No judge in any court would side with you. Her uncle has no legal authority over an adult woman, Amelia called from where she was wrapping the wounded man's arm, particularly one who is now married. Mr. Blackwood, you have lost. Go home. Find someone else to obsess over. I am never going to be yours. Blackwood's horse danced nervously as his hands tightened on the reins. For a moment, Cole thought he might try something desperate and stupid. Then, finally, common sense seemed to prevail. The man wasn't brave when faced with genuine resistance. He was a bully, and bullies folded when confronted with real courage. This isn't over, Blackwood repeated, but the threat rang hollow. Actually, it is, Cole said. But to make sure you understand that, here's what's going to happen. You and your hired guns are going to leave my property. You're going to ride straight through the territory without stopping, without causing trouble, without so much as looking sideways at anyone. Because I'm going to make sure every rancher, every marshal, every person of influence between here and the territorial border knows exactly what you tried to do here today. Your name is going to be Mud in Montana Territory Blackwood. You'll never do business here, never be welcome here, and if you ever try to come back, you won't get the polite reception you got today. Polite? Blackwood spat. You call shooting one of my men polite? I call not killing all 6 of you when you came here to take a woman against her will very polite, Cole said flatly. Now get off my land before my neighbors and I reconsider that mercy. Blackwood stared at him for another long moment, then jerked his horse's head around. Useless, all of you, he snapped at his hired guns. Get him on a horse and let's leave this godforsaken wasteland. You'll need to take these, Amelia said, standing and holding out packets wrapped in paper. Willow bark for the pain, instructions for changing the dressing. If the wounds show signs of infection, increased redness, heat, pus, red streaks on the skin, find a doctor immediately or he could lose the arm. The wounded man took the packets with his good hand, staring at her with something like awe. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry for what we came here to do. Then don't do it again, Amelia said simply. Choose your employers more carefully next time. They watched as Blackwood and his men rode away, the hired guns supporting their wounded companion. Cole didn't lower his weapon until they disappeared from sight, and even then he kept himself alert, aware that desperate men sometimes doubled back. Miguel, Tommy, follow them for a few miles, make sure they actually leave, he ordered. Everyone else stay alert until we're certain they're gone. Then Amelia was in his arms, and he was holding her so tightly he might have been hurting her, except she was holding him just as hard, her face pressed against his chest, her body shaking with reaction now that the immediate danger had passed. It's over, he murmured into her hair. You're safe. He's gone. You could have been killed, she said, her voice muffled and thick with tears. He could have shot you, but he didn't. We're both fine. Cole pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. You stood up to him, Amelia. You were magnificent. I was terrified, she admitted. So was I. But we did it anyway. That's what courage is. Around them, the gathered neighbors began to relax, weapons being lowered, tension easing. Martha Henderson approached with a knowing smile. Well, that was more excitement than we usually get around here, she said dryly. Though I have to say, watching you two stand together against that pompous ass was quite satisfying. You make a good team. We do, don't we? Cole said, looking at Amelia with something warm and fierce in his chest. We really do, she agreed, managing a smile despite her tears. That night, after the neighbors had reluctantly departed back to their own ranches, after Miguel and Tommy had returned confirming that Blackwood and his men had indeed left the territory, Cole and Amelia sat by the fire in their home, together, and finally allowed themselves to breathe. I can't believe it's actually over, Amelia said, leaning against Cole's shoulder. I've been running from him for so long, always looking over my shoulder, always afraid. You're not running anymore, Cole said, pressing a kiss to her temple. You're home. You're safe. And you have 20 armed neighbors who'd ride through a blizzard to defend you if needed. I do, don't I? Amelia sounded almost wondering. I came here expecting isolation and found community. I came expecting a business arrangement and found us. Us? Cole echoed, turning her face up to his. I love you, Amelia Whitmore. I know I said it before, but I want to say it again now that the danger's passed and we have time to actually think about what it means. I love you. I want to build a real marriage with you, a real partnership based on more than just practicality. I love you too, Amelia said, her gray eyes shining in the firelight. I want that too. All of it. They kissed with the sweetness of relief and new beginning, of surviving danger together and choosing each other not out of necessity, but out of genuine feeling. When they finally drew apart, Amelia rested her head on his shoulder again. Tell me something, she said quietly. If I'd never told you about Blackwood, if you'd never known there was danger coming, do you think we would have gotten here anyway? To this place where we're being honest about our feelings? Cole considered the question seriously. I think we would have, he said finally. Maybe more slowly, maybe with more circling around the truth. But yes. Because what we have isn't based on fear or danger, Amelia. It's based on respect, shared values, genuine affection. The danger just forced us to be honest about it sooner. Good, she said, because I'd hate to think that fear was the only thing that made us real. We were always real, Cole assured her. From the moment you stepped off that stagecoach. I just didn't know it yet. They sat together in companionable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers, feeling the peace of a home protected, a love acknowledged, a future opening before them full of possibility instead of constraint. Outside, Montana winter held the land in its cold embrace, but inside the Whitmore ranch house, there was only warmth, safety, and the quiet contentment of two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed, and so much more than they dared to hope for. The practical arrangement had become something far more valuable, a real partnership built on trust, respect, and love. And whatever challenges the frontier threw at them next, they would face them together. The weeks following Blackwood's departure settled into a rhythm that felt almost too peaceful after the tension that had preceded it. January brought bitter cold that locked the territory in ice and snow, but inside the Whitmore ranch house, there was warmth that had nothing to do with the constantly burning fire. Cole and Amelia moved through their days with the easy synchronization of partners who were learning to anticipate each other's needs, their marriage deepening in ways both obvious and subtle. Amelia's medical practice expanded despite the harsh winter. Word had spread not just about her skills, but about her courage in standing up to Blackwood, and people respected strength as much as they valued healing. Women came to her with questions they'd never dared ask before, seeking knowledge about their own bodies, about preventing pregnancy or ensuring it, about the mysteries of health that frontier life made so precarious. Men came with old injuries that had healed badly, asking if anything could be done, and often Amelia found ways to ease pain that had been suffered in silence for years. Cole watched his wife flourish in her work and felt something swell in his chest that might have been pride or might have been love, so intense it bordered on pain. She was extraordinary, and somehow, impossibly, she had chosen him. She had chosen this life, this harsh and beautiful territory, this ranch that was slowly becoming not just his legacy, but theirs together. On a particularly brutal morning in late January, Cole woke before dawn to the sound of someone pounding urgently on the door. He was out of bed instantly, careful not to wake Amelia as he grabbed his pants and shirt, though she stirred anyway, trained by months of emergency calls to wake at the first sign of need. "What is it?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "Don't know yet. Stay warm. I'll check." Cole descended the stairs quickly, rifle in hand by habit, though he doubted anyone threatening would announce themselves by knocking. He opened the door to find Dan Porter, his face gray with worry despite the cold that should have brought color to his cheeks. "Cole, thank God," Dan said, his breath coming in gasps as if he'd run the whole way instead of riding. "It's Maggie. The baby, something's wrong. She's bleeding, and the pain is worse than when she delivered little Thomas. Mrs. Henderson is with her, but Martha sent me to fetch Amelia. She says if anyone can help, it's your wife." Cole didn't waste time with questions. "I'll get her. You warm yourself by the fire and catch your breath. We'll ride back with you." Upstairs, Amelia was already dressing, having heard enough through the floorboards to understand the urgency. "Maggie Porter?" she asked, pulling on her warmest clothes with practiced speed. "Bleeding and in pain. Martha's with her but wants you there." Cole helped her with her coat, his hands lingering on her shoulders for just a moment. "Are you ready for a ride in this cold?" "I'm ready for whatever's needed," Amelia said, already moving toward her medical supplies. She packed her bag with swift efficiency, her hands selecting instruments and medicines with the sureness of long practice. Postpartum hemorrhaging, possibly, or retained placental fragments. Either way, we need to move fast. They rode through darkness that was barely touched by the gray light of approaching dawn, the cold so intense it burned in Cole's lungs with each breath. Amelia rode beside him without complaint, her focus entirely on the woman who needed her help. Cole had never loved her more than in that moment, watching her push through dangerous cold to save a life, asking nothing for herself. The Porter Ranch was smaller than the Whitmore spread, the house a simple two-room cabin that felt crowded with Dan's 3 children from his first marriage, baby Thomas, and now Martha Henderson hovering over Maggie's bed. Martha's face showed relief when they burst through the door, bringing a swirl of frigid air with them. "Thank heaven you're here," Martha said, stepping aside to let Amelia approach. "She's been bleeding for about 2 hours, started having contractions again like she was in labor, but the baby's already born. Something's not right." Amelia was already at Maggie's bedside, her trained eye assessing the situation. The younger woman was pale, too pale, with the sheen of sweat on her face despite the chill in the room. Her hands clutched the sheets, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. "Maggie," Amelia said, her voice calm and clear. "I'm here. Can you tell me what you're feeling?" "Hurts," Maggie gasped. "Cramps, like labor but sharper. And the bleeding won't stop. I'm scared, Amelia. I'm so scared." "I know, but I'm going to help you." Amelia turned to Martha. "I need hot water, clean cloths, and more light. Cole, I need you and Dan to take the children outside or to the other room. This isn't something they should see." Cole helped herd the frightened children away. The oldest, a girl of about 10, trying to be brave for her younger siblings even as tears streamed down her face. "Is Ma going to die?" she whispered to Cole. "Your stepmother is in the best hands in the territory," Cole told her gently. "Mrs. Whitmore knows what she's doing. You just keep your brothers and sister calm, all right? Can you do that?" The girl nodded, squaring her small shoulders in a gesture that reminded Cole painfully of Amelia facing down Blackwood. Courage came in all sizes, all ages. Back in the main room, Amelia had taken control with quiet authority. Martha moved to assist her, following instructions precisely as Amelia examined Maggie, her hands gentle but thorough. Cole watched from the doorway, ready to help if needed, but knowing enough to stay out of the way. "It's as I suspected," Amelia said after a few minutes. "Retained placental tissue. A piece of the afterbirth didn't deliver completely, and it's causing the bleeding and contractions. I need to remove it." "Will she—" Dan started, his voice breaking. "She'll be fine if we act now," Amelia said firmly. "But I need to do a procedure that's going to be painful, and I need her to trust me and stay as still as possible. Maggie, do you understand?" Maggie nodded weakly. "Do whatever you need to do. Just please don't let me die. My babies need me." "You're not going to die," Amelia said with such certainty that everyone in the room believed her. "I've done this before. You're going to feel pressure and pain, but you're going to survive. And in a few days you'll be back to mothering those children like nothing happened. Martha, I need you to hold her hand and talk to her. Keep her focused on your voice. Dan, you might want to wait outside for this." "I'm staying," Dan said stubbornly. "She's my wife." "Then stay by her head, hold her other hand, and do not interfere with what I'm doing no matter what you hear or see. Understood?" Amelia's tone brooked no argument. What followed was some of the longest minutes of Cole's life. He remained in the doorway, watching his wife work with steady hands and absolute focus, murmuring reassurance to Maggie even as she did what was necessary to save the woman's life. Maggie cried out several times, the pain clearly intense, but Martha and Dan held her steady, and Amelia never wavered. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably less than 10 minutes, Amelia stepped back, relief evident in her posture. I've got it. The tissue is out. The bleeding should slow significantly now. Maggie, you did beautifully. You're so brave. Maggie was crying, whether from relief or residual pain or both. Is it over? Is it really over? The dangerous part is over, Amelia confirmed, already cleaning her instruments with methodical care. You're going to need bed rest for at least a week, possibly 2. No getting up except to use the chamber pot, and even then I want someone helping you. You need to rebuild your strength and let your body heal, but you're going to recover fully. Thank you, Dan said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for saving her. I don't have words for what you just did. You don't need words. Just make sure she follows my instructions. Amelia turned to Martha. Can you stay for a few days? Help with the children and make sure Maggie rests? Of course, Martha said immediately. Ben can manage without me for a bit. These children need looking after, and Maggie needs watching. Cole stepped forward as Amelia began packing up her supplies, her hands trembling slightly now that the crisis had passed. He knew that shake. It was the aftermath of intense focus, the body's delayed reaction to stress. He took the bag from her gently. You should sit down for a moment, he said quietly. I'm fine, Amelia insisted, but she let him guide her to a chair anyway. Dan brought them both coffee, strong and hot, and they sat in the porter's small kitchen while Martha settled Maggie and got the children back to bed. The sky outside was lightening to gray, morning coming late in the depths of winter. That was incredible, Dan said, looking at Amelia with something like awe. I've seen doctors before, back east before we came here. None of them worked with the kind of confidence you just showed. Where did you learn to do that? Dr. Harrison, the physician I trained under, believed in teaching by doing, Amelia said, wrapping her cold hands around the warm cup. He said you couldn't truly learn medicine from books alone. You had to touch, feel, see, smell, use all your senses to understand what was happening in the body. So he let me assist with procedures most physicians would never let a woman near. I'm grateful for that training now. It's the difference between knowing something in theory and knowing it in practice. Well, I'm grateful you had that training, Dan said fervently. You saved Maggie's life. There's no question about that. If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't known what to do, he couldn't finish the sentence, emotion choking his words. But I was here, and I did know, Amelia said gently. That's what matters. They stayed for another hour, making sure Maggie was stable and resting comfortably, giving Martha detailed instructions for the coming days. By the time they rode back toward home, the sun was fully up, glinting off snow that was so bright it hurt to look at directly. You saved her life, Cole said as they rode, needing to voice what Dan had already said. If you hadn't known what to do, Maggie would have bled to death. Probably, Amelia agreed, her voice tired but satisfied. Retained placental tissue is one of the most common causes of postpartum death. Most women out here don't have access to anyone who knows how to handle it. They just bleed until they die, leaving their children motherless. But not Maggie. Not on your watch. Cole reached over, taking her gloved hand in his. You're saving this territory, Amelia. One life at a time, you're making a difference that's going to ripple out for generations. Those children will grow up with their mother. They'll tell their own children someday about the woman who saved her. You're building something important here. Amelia was quiet for a moment, then said softly, I never thought I'd find purpose like this. In Boston, I was Dr. Harrison's assistant. I helped, but I was always in his shadow, always limited by what society said was appropriate for a woman. Here, I'm just needed. People don't care that I'm a woman. They care that I can help them. It's liberating in a way I never expected. You're not just needed, Cole said, squeezing her hand. You're valued. There's a difference. They reached home to find Miguel waiting with news that made Cole's chest tighten with concern. Boss, we've got a problem. Found tracks this morning up in the north pasture. Looks like wolves took down one of the cattle. Cole swore under his breath. Wolves were a constant threat in Montana winters, but they usually stayed higher in the mountains where prey was more plentiful. If they were coming down to the ranch, it meant the winter was even harder than he'd thought. How many in the pack? He asked. Hard to tell from the tracks, but I'd guess at least 6, maybe more. Miguel's expression was grim. They'll be back, boss. Once they know the cattle are easy prey, they'll keep coming. Then we'll have to hunt them before they decimate the herd. Cole looked at Amelia, seeing exhaustion in every line of her body. Go inside, get warm, rest. I'll handle this. Be careful, she said, and there was fear in her eyes that squeezed his heart. After everything they'd survived, the thought of losing him to something as mundane as a wolf hunt clearly terrified her. Always, he promised, kissing her cold lips. I'll be back before dark. But hunting wolves in winter proved more difficult than Cole had anticipated. He and Miguel tracked the pack through snow that made every step exhausting, following signs that led them higher into the foothills where the wind cut like knives and the temperature dropped even further. They found the kill site, the scattered remains of the steer, but the wolves themselves remained elusive, their tracks disappearing into rocky terrain where horses couldn't follow. We'll have to try again tomorrow, Cole said finally, as the light began to fail. Set up watch rotations tonight, keep the herd closer to the barn. We can't afford to lose any more cattle. They returned to find the ranch house warm and welcoming, the smell of cooking filling the air. Amelia had recovered enough to make dinner, and she fussed over Cole when he came in half frozen, stripping off his outer clothes and pushing him toward the fire. Any luck? She asked, pressing a cup of hot coffee into his hands. No, they're smart, staying in terrain where we can't follow easily. Cole drank gratefully, feeling circulation return painfully to his extremities. We'll try again tomorrow, and the day after that if necessary. We can't let them keep picking off the herd. Over the next week, the wolf hunt became Cole's obsession. Every morning before dawn, he and his ranch hands would ride out, tracking the pack, trying to find their den or catch them in the open where rifles could do their work. But the wolves were cunning, always staying just ahead, taking cattle when the opportunity presented itself, but never exposing themselves to danger. Amelia grew increasingly worried as she watched Cole drive himself to exhaustion, coming home each night colder and more frustrated. On the 8th day, she finally confronted him as he was preparing to ride out again. This has to stop, she said, blocking the door. You're going to kill yourself out there. And for what? We've already lost 3 head. That's bad, but it's not worth your life. Those cattle represent our security, Cole said stubbornly, our future. I can't just let the wolves take them. And I can't let you freeze to death or get hurt because you're too exhausted to be careful. Amelia's gray eyes flashed with anger and fear. I didn't survive Blackwood just to lose you to foolish pride, Cole Whitmore. It's not pride. It is pride, she interrupted. Pride that won't admit when a situation is beyond your control. Pride that won't accept help or advice. Pride that's going to get you killed if you don't check it. They stared at each other, tension crackling between them. Then Cole's shoulders slumped, the fight going out of him as he recognized the truth in her words. You're right, he admitted quietly. I've been pushing too hard. I hate feeling helpless. Hate watching something threaten what we've built and not being able to stop it. I know, Amelia said, her tone softening as she moved closer, her hands coming up to cup his face. But you're not helpless, and you're not alone. We'll figure this out together. Maybe there's another way to deal with the wolves besides hunting them down. What other way is there? I don't know yet. But I know that you running yourself ragged isn't the answer. She kissed him gently. Promise me you'll rest today. Give yourself time to think clearly instead of just reacting. Cole promised, and to his surprise, the day of rest did help. As he sat by the fire that afternoon, warm and fed and no longer exhausted to the bone, his mind began working on the problem from different angles. By evening, he had the beginnings of a plan. What if we don't hunt the wolves, he said to Amelia as they prepared dinner together. What if we make the cattle harder to get to instead? How? She asked, curious. We've been letting them graze too spread out, makes them vulnerable. If we keep them closer together, closer to the buildings, post guards with torches and rifles, wolves are afraid of fire and noise. We create a perimeter they won't want to cross. Cole was thinking out loud now, the plan crystallizing as he spoke. It'll mean more work, more hay since they can't graze as freely, but it might work better than trying to track down every wolf in the territory. That's brilliant, Amelia said, and the pride in her voice made warmth bloom in his chest. It's defensive instead of offensive. You're not fighting the wolves directly, you're just making your cattle too difficult to target. Exactly. Cole felt energy returning, the kind that came from having a real plan instead of just desperate action. I'll talk to the hands tomorrow, set up a rotation for guard duty, move the herd closer in. It might not be perfect, but it's better than what we've been doing. The new strategy worked. Within 3 days of implementing the tighter security, the wolf attacks stopped. The pack moved on to easier prey, and the Whitmore cattle remained safe. Cole found himself grateful for Amelia's intervention, for her willingness to challenge him when he was being foolish. That was what partnership meant. Being willing to tell each other hard truths, to pull each other back from the edge when pride or fear or desperation threatened to lead them astray. February brought a brief thaw that turned the snow to slush and made traveling treacherous, but it also brought visitors. Jim Carson, the man who'd warned them about Blackwood, returned with news and an unexpected request. "I've been thinking about settling down," Carson told them over dinner, his weathered face showing a vulnerability that seemed at odds with his rough exterior. "I'm getting too old to keep drifting, hiring on for seasonal work. I was wondering if you might need another permanent hand. I know you've got Miguel and the others, but I'm willing to work hard and I know cattle." Cole and Amelia exchanged glances, a whole conversation happening in that single look. They discussed this possibility after Carson's first visit, both of them feeling they owed him for his warning. "We'd be glad to have you," Cole said. "The bunkhouse has room, pay is fair, and the work is steady. You proved yourself when you rode through that storm to warn us. That counts for a lot." Relief washed over Carson's face, making him look years younger. "Thank you. I won't let you down." "There's one condition," Amelia added. "That cough you're trying to hide, I want to examine it. You sound like you might have bronchitis, and if it's not treated properly, it could turn into something worse." Carson looked sheepish. "You don't miss much, do you, Mrs. Whitmore?" "I'm trained to notice these things," she said dryly. "After dinner, you're coming to the clinic. No arguments." Carson's bronchitis was indeed serious, requiring treatment and rest that would have been impossible if he'd still been drifting between jobs. Under Amelia's care, he recovered over the next 2 weeks, and by the time he was healthy enough to work, he'd already proven his worth in other ways, helping with repairs, offering advice based on years of experience, fitting into the ranch's rhythm with surprising ease. "He's good with the horses," Cole observed one evening, watching Carson work with a mare that had been skittish since they'd acquired her. "Patient, gentle, that's a rare quality." "He's good for you too," Amelia said. "I've noticed you've been more relaxed since he arrived. I think you needed someone with experience you could consult with, someone who's seen enough of the world to offer perspective." Cole considered this. "Maybe. I've been doing this mostly alone since my parents died. Having another experienced rancher to talk things through with does help. Makes me feel less like I'm making it up as I go." "You're doing far better than just making it up," Amelia assured him. "You've built something solid here, Cole. Something that's going to last." As winter began its slow retreat toward spring, the Whitmore Ranch settled into a new configuration. Cole's small operation had grown, not just in physical resources, but in the people who made it function. Miguel, Tommy, Joe, and now Carson formed a crew that worked well together, each man bringing different strengths to the collective effort. Amelia's medical practice had become an established part of the territory's infrastructure, with patients traveling from increasingly far distances to seek her care. But it was the quiet moments that Cole treasured most. Evenings by the fire with Amelia reading aloud while he mended tack, her voice bringing characters and stories to life in the warm lamplight. Mornings waking to find her curled against him, her dark hair spread across his chest, her breathing soft and even. The way she'd smile at him across the kitchen while they worked together preparing meals, a private smile that said she was as surprised as he was by how good this had turned out to be. They were building something together, not just a ranch or a medical practice, but a life, a real marriage based on mutual respect, genuine affection, and a partnership that made them both stronger than they'd been alone. In early March, Martha Henderson rode over with news that made both Cole and Amelia go still with mixed emotions. "There's talk in Helena," Martha said, accepting the coffee Amelia offered. "Someone's been asking questions about you two, specifically about Amelia's medical work." Cole felt his protective instincts surge immediately. "What kind of questions? Who's asking?" "Now don't go getting that look," Martha said. "It's nothing bad. Seems a territorial official has heard about Amelia's skills and wants to know if she'd be willing to work with the Territorial Health Board. They're trying to establish better medical services throughout Montana, and they're looking for qualified people who understand frontier conditions. Amelia sat down slowly, her expression stunned. The Territorial Health Board wants to work with me? That's what I heard. They're sending a representative to meet with you next week. Martha's eyes twinkled. Seems you've made quite a reputation for yourself, my dear. People talk, word spreads. The territorial government is finally realizing that out here, we can't afford to be picky about whether our medical professionals are men or women. We just need people who know what they're doing. This is incredible, Cole said, looking at his wife with pride that felt like it might burst out of his chest. Amelia, do you understand what this means? Official recognition, possibly funding for supplies, connection to other medical professionals. It means legitimacy, Amelia said softly, and Cole heard the emotion in her voice. It means I'm not just the rancher's wife who knows some medicine. It means my work is being recognized as valuable in its own right. It always has been valuable, Martha said firmly. But yes, official recognition matters. It'll make your work easier, give you access to resources you don't have now. You should be proud, Amelia. You've accomplished something remarkable in just a few months. After Martha left, Cole found Amelia in the clinic, staring at her medical books as if seeing them anew. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. You're going to say yes, aren't you? He asked, to working with the Territorial Health Board? Do you want me to? She asked, leaning back against him. What I want is for you to do what makes you happy, Cole said. But if you're asking my opinion, yes, I think you should say yes. This is an opportunity to expand your impact, to help more people, to be part of building something bigger than just one clinic on one ranch. You'd be foolish to pass it up. Even if it means I'm busier, even if it means sometimes I'll have to travel to Helena or other settlements for meetings? Even then, Cole turned her in his arms so he could see her face. I married a physician's assistant with medical skills this territory desperately needs. I'd be a hypocrite if I tried to limit how you use those skills just to keep you close to home. Besides, I'm secure enough in our marriage to handle you being away sometimes. Amelia kissed him, soft and sweet. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in at least 3 hours, Cole teased. I was starting to wonder. I love you, she said, more seriously now. I love that you support my work even when it's inconvenient. I love that you see me as more than just your wife. I love the life we're building together. I love you too, Cole said. All of you, the healer, the partner, the woman who argues with me about books and makes me think about things I never considered before. You've made my life bigger, Amelia. Better, more meaningful. They stood together in the clinic, surrounded by the instruments and medicines that represented Amelia's calling, and Cole felt a contentment so deep it was almost frightening. This was what his parents had, this sense of rightness, of two people fitting together perfectly. He'd been so afraid of that kind of connection, so certain it would destroy him. But standing there with Amelia in his arms, Cole realized that his mother hadn't died because she loved his father too much. She'd died because she'd lost the will to live without him, had surrendered to grief instead of fighting to survive. That was the real danger, not love itself, but losing yourself so completely in another person that you couldn't exist without them. Cole loved Amelia fiercely, completely, but he was still himself. She loved him the same way. Their love didn't diminish them. It enhanced them, made them both more capable, more confident, more willing to take risks and embrace challenges. That was the difference. The territorial representative arrived the following week as promised, a stern-looking woman named Eleanor Saunders, who turned out to have a dry sense of humor and an impressive knowledge of frontier medicine. She spent 3 hours interviewing Amelia, reviewing her training and experience, asking detailed questions about cases she'd handled. Cole stayed out of it, trusting Amelia to represent herself, but he watched from a distance with fierce pride. When Mrs. Saunders finally emerged from the clinic, she looked satisfied. Your wife is precisely the kind of medical professional we need, she told Cole. Practical, knowledgeable, unafraid of difficult cases. If she's willing, we'd like to offer her an official position as a territorial health consultant. She'd continue her work here, but would also be available to consult on difficult cases elsewhere, help train other medical personnel, and contribute to public health initiatives. That sounds perfect for her, Cole said. But you should discuss the details with Amelia herself. It's her decision to make. I like you, Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Saunders said with a slight smile. Not every husband would be so supportive of his wife's independent work. The territory needs more men like you. Amelia accepted the position, of course. How could she not? It was everything she'd hoped for and more. Recognition, resources, the ability to make a difference on a larger scale. Cole watched her bloom in the weeks that followed, taking on new challenges with the same focused determination she brought to everything. But even as their lives expanded and their future looked brighter than ever, Cole couldn't shake a nagging sense of unease. Things were going too well. The ranch was profitable. Amelia's practice was thriving. Their marriage was strong. In Cole's experience, the frontier had a way of punishing happiness, of reminding people that peace was temporary and disaster was always just one bad breakaway. He tried to push the feeling aside, telling himself he was being paranoid. They'd earned this peace, this success. They deserved to enjoy it without waiting for the other shoe to drop. But the feeling persisted, a shadow at the edge of his consciousness, whispering that their trials weren't over yet. On a gray afternoon in late March, as the snow was finally beginning to melt and the first hints of spring were greening the landscape, Cole's instincts proved correct. Tommy came riding hard from the eastern pasture, his young face pale with urgency. "Boss, Mrs. Whitmore, you need to come quick," he shouted, pulling his horse to a stop in a spray of mud. "There's a wagon overturned on the road, maybe a mile out. Looks like a family. There's a woman and children, and I think they might be hurt bad." Cole and Amelia moved as one, Cole grabbing his coat and rifle, while Amelia seized her medical bag. They rode out with Tommy leading the way, Miguel and Carson following close behind. As they approached the scene, Cole's stomach dropped. The wagon had clearly hit a washed-out section of road and flipped, spilling its contents across the muddy ground. A man lay motionless near the wreckage, his head bleeding. A woman was trying to reach toward the wagon where high-pitched screaming suggested trapped children, but her leg was bent at an unnatural angle and she couldn't move. "Cole, help me get to the children first," Amelia said, already dismounting and running toward the wagon. "Miguel, Carson, see to that man. Be careful moving him if there's a head injury. Tommy, help me with the woman." What followed was organized chaos as they worked to extract the family from the disaster. The man had a severe head wound but was breathing. The woman's leg was broken, the bone protruding through skin in a compound fracture that made even Cole's stomach turn. And trapped in the wagon were 3 children, the oldest maybe 7, the youngest an infant. Amelia moved between them all with calm efficiency, triaging, prioritizing, making split-second decisions about who needed attention first and what could wait. Cole watched her save lives in real time, her hand steady as she splinted the woman's leg, cleaned and bandaged the man's head wound, checked each child for injuries. "We need to get them to the ranch," she said finally, her face smudged with mud and blood, but her voice still calm. "They're stable for now, but they all need more care than I can provide here. Cole, can we use the wagon if we can ride it?" "It's damaged, but we can make it work," Cole assessed quickly. "Miguel, help me get this upright. Carson, fashion some kind of stretcher for the man. We'll need to move him carefully." It took another hour to get the family loaded and transported back to the ranch. Amelia turned her clinic into an emergency ward, working through the night to ensure her patients survived. The man had a severe concussion and needed constant monitoring. The woman's leg required surgery to clean and set properly. Bone fragments had to be removed, tissue debrided. The whole thing a delicate process that Amelia performed with Cole assisting, both of them working in focused silence. Dawn was breaking when Amelia finally stepped out of the clinic, her dress covered in blood, her hair falling from its pins, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Cole was there immediately, wrapping his arms around her. "They're going to be all right," she said against his chest. "All of them. It was close, but they're going to survive." "You saved them," Cole said. "An entire family. Because you were here, because you knew what to do, they're going to live." Amelia pulled back to look at him, tears finally spilling down her cheeks now that the crisis had passed. "Do you see now? Do you see why I had to do this? Why I couldn't just be a rancher's wife and nothing more?" "I've always seen it," Cole said, wiping her tears away gently. "From the moment your trunk spilled open and I saw those medical books. I've always known you were meant for this." "I was so afraid when I came here," she confessed. "Afraid I'd have to give up medicine. Afraid I'd be trapped in a role that didn't fit. Afraid I'd lose myself trying to be what someone else needed. But you never asked me to be anything except exactly who I am." "How could I?" Cole asked. "Who you are is extraordinary. Why would I want to change that?" They stood together in the early morning light, battered by the night's emergency but stronger for having faced it together, and Cole realized something profound. The fear he'd carried for so long, that loving someone completely would destroy him the way it had destroyed his mother, had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding. His mother had been destroyed not by love, but by the loss of her identity within that love. She'd made his father her whole world, and when he died, she had nothing left to live for. But Cole and Amelia had built something different. They loved each other fiercely, but they were still themselves, individuals with purpose beyond their partnership, people who made each other stronger without losing their essential selves. That was the key. That was what made this work. They enhanced each other without consuming each other. They supported each other's dreams without sacrificing their own. They were partners in the truest sense, two complete people who chose to build a life together, not two halves trying to make a whole. "Come inside," Cole said softly. "You need rest. The family will be fine for a few hours while you sleep." "I should check on them one more time." "Amelia." Cole's tone was firm but loving. "You've been up for over 24 hours. You've performed surgery, saved multiple lives, and pushed yourself to the absolute limit. Rest isn't optional, it's necessary. I'll watch over them. If anything changes, I'll wake you immediately." She wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes, but exhaustion won out. She let him lead her to their room, help her out of her blood-stained clothes, tuck her into bed. She was asleep almost before her head hit the pillow, her breathing evening out into the deep rhythm of true rest. Cole watched her sleep for a moment, love and pride and a fierce protectiveness washing over him. Then he went back to the clinic to keep watch over the patients his wife had saved, ready to wake her if needed, but determined to let her rest as long as possible. The family, the Carters, they learned once everyone was conscious and communicative, stayed at the ranch for 3 weeks while they recovered. Mr. Carter's head injury healed slowly but completely. Mrs. Carter's leg required careful nursing, but under Amelia's care, it set properly, and she would walk again without permanent damage. The children, resilient as children were, bounced back quickly. By the time the Carters were ready to continue their journey to Helena, where Mr. Carter had been promised work, they'd become something like extended family. Cole found himself oddly sorry to see them go, even though it meant his house would be less crowded and his supplies less strained. "You saved our lives," Mr. Carter said as they loaded the repaired wagon for departure. "All of us. We'll never forget that, Mrs. Whitmore. Never." "You would have done the same for someone else," Amelia said, but Cole could see she was moved. "Just promise me you'll be careful on these roads. They're treacherous this time of year." "We will," Mrs. Carter promised, squeezing Amelia's hands. "And if we hear of anyone needing medical help in Helena, we'll send them your way. The territory needs to know there's a real healer out here." After they'd gone, Cole found Amelia standing in the yard, staring after the departed wagon with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What are you thinking?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "I'm thinking that this is why I came west," she said quietly. "Not to escape Blackwood, though that was part of it. Not even to find you, though I'm grateful I did. I came west because out here, I can make a real difference. Out here, I'm not limited by society's expectations or men's assumptions about what women can and can't do. I'm just someone with skills that are needed, and that's enough." "It's more than enough," Cole said, taking her hand. "You're building a legacy here, Amelia. Years from now, people will talk about the woman who brought real medicine to this part of Montana. They'll tell stories about the lives you saved, the families you kept together, the difference you made." "We're building it," she corrected, squeezing his hand. "You and me together. Because none of this would be possible without your support, your partnership, your belief in what I'm doing." Cole pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Then let's keep building, together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it the way we've faced everything else, side by side, as partners." "As partners," Amelia agreed, leaning into him. And as something more. What's that? Cole asked. She pulled back to look at him, her gray eyes shining with emotion and something else, something that looked like joy mixed with nervousness. As parents, Cole, I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. The world seemed to stop, then restart in brilliant color. Cole stared at her, his mind trying to process words that felt simultaneously impossible and inevitable. A baby. Their baby. New life growing inside the woman he loved more than he'd ever thought possible to love anyone. You're sure? He finally managed. I'm sure, Amelia said, laughing through sudden tears. I've known for a few weeks, but wanted to be certain before I told you. Cole, are you happy? Happy? Cole found himself laughing too, picking her up and spinning her around right there in the muddy yard. Amelia, I'm terrified and thrilled and more happy than I've ever been in my life. We're going to have a baby, a child. Someone who's half you and half me. When he set her down, they were both crying and laughing, holding each other like they could merge into one person through sheer force of emotion. I love you, Cole said. I love you so much, and I love our child already, and I love the life we're building together. I love you too, Amelia said. I love you for supporting my work, for standing by me, for helping me become more than I ever could have been alone, and I can't wait to see what kind of parents we become together. They stood together in the spring sunshine, their hands clasped, their future stretching before them bright with possibility. The lonely cowboy who'd advertised for a practical wife had found instead a true partner, a love that enhanced rather than diminished, a woman who made him braver and better, and more himself than he'd ever been alone. And now they were bringing new life into the world, a child who would grow up knowing that love wasn't something to fear, that partnership meant supporting each other's dreams, that a family could be built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than just duty or convenience. Whatever challenges still lay ahead, and Cole had no doubt there would be challenges, they would face them as they'd faced everything else. Together, as partners, as lovers, as friends, building something that would last not just their lifetimes, but generations beyond. The Montana Territory stretched vast and beautiful around them, and for the first time since his parents had died, Cole looked at that landscape and saw not just survival, but genuine hope for the future. The news of Amelia's pregnancy spread through the territory with the same speed that word of her medical skills had traveled months before. Neighbors arrived with gifts, hand-sewn baby clothes, carved wooden toys, advice both solicited and not. Martha Henderson appointed herself Amelia's unofficial guardian, showing up regularly to check on her and share wisdom from raising her own 5 children. You'll want to take it easier in the coming months, Martha said one afternoon as they sat on the porch shelling peas. No more riding out to emergencies in the middle of the night. Martha, I'm a physician's assistant who happens to be pregnant, not an invalid, Amelia protested, though her tone was affectionate. Women have been having babies and continuing their work since the beginning of time. And women have also lost babies by pushing too hard, Martha countered. I'm not saying stop working entirely. I'm saying be sensible about it. Let Cole or the hands handle things that require hard riding or heavy lifting. Focus on patients who can come to you here. Cole, overhearing from where he was repairing the porch railing, found himself nodding in agreement. The protective instinct that had flared when Blackwood threatened Amelia had returned tenfold now that she carried their child. Every cough, every moment of fatigue, every time she pushed herself too hard, all of it made his heart clench with fear. But he was learning, slowly, not to smother her with that fear. Amelia needed to work, needed to feel useful and capable. His job wasn't to wrap her in cotton wool, but to support her while being honest about his concerns. Martha has a point, he said carefully, setting down his hammer. Maybe we could set up a system where people know to come here unless it's truly an emergency that can't wait. Amelia looked between them, her expression softening as she recognized the worry beneath their words. All right, she conceded. I'll be more cautious about which calls I respond to. But I'm not going to stop working entirely. This baby needs to know from the start that their mother is someone who helps people. Stubborn woman, Cole said, but he was smiling. You married me knowing that, Amelia shot back. Spring deepened into summer, and with it came the busiest season for both ranch work and medical calls. Calves were being born, requiring constant vigilance to ensure their survival. Crops needed planting in the small garden plot Amelia had expanded to include medicinal herbs. And the steady stream of patients continued: injuries from farm work, childhood illnesses, the inevitable ailments that came with frontier life. Amelia's pregnancy progressed smoothly through those early months. She bloomed under the Montana sun, her skin taking on a healthy glow, her body changing in ways that Cole found himself watching with fascinated tenderness. At night, he'd place his hand on her still flat belly and try to imagine the life growing there. Their child, a person who would be part of both of them. "Do you hope for a boy or a girl?" Amelia asked one evening as they lay in bed, Cole's hand resting on her stomach as had become his habit. "I don't care," Cole said honestly. "As long as the baby is healthy and you survive the birth safely, I'll be happy either way." "You worry about the birth," Amelia observed. It wasn't a question. "Of course I worry." Cole's hand tightened slightly on her stomach. "I've seen what childbirth can do. I know the risks better than most men because you've explained them to me. And I know that even with all your training and knowledge, things can still go wrong." "They can," Amelia agreed, turning to face him in the darkness. "But they probably won't. I'm healthy, I'm young, I have access to medical knowledge and supplies. The odds are very much in our favor." "But not guaranteed," Cole said. "Nothing in life is guaranteed," Amelia said gently, her hand coming up to cup his face. "We could die tomorrow, from a dozen different causes that have nothing to do with childbirth. The only thing we can do is live fully while we're here, love fiercely, and trust that we're strong enough to face whatever comes." Cole knew she was right, but the fear remained, a constant undercurrent to his joy. He'd lost so much already: his parents, the certainty of his younger years, the illusion that hard work and careful planning could protect against all disasters. The thought of losing Amelia, of being left alone to raise a child without her, terrified him in ways he couldn't fully articulate. But he didn't burden her with those fears beyond that one conversation. Instead, he channeled his worry into action, making sure the ranch was running so smoothly that he could be present when the baby came, setting aside money for any medical supplies or assistance Amelia might need, even arranging for a midwife from Helena to come stay with them when Amelia's time grew close. It was in late June, with Amelia nearly 4 months pregnant and beginning to show, that the peace they'd been building shattered. Cole was out in the north pasture checking fence lines when he heard the sound of multiple horses approaching fast. His hand went instinctively to his rifle before he recognized Miguel, riding at the head of a group that included 2 strangers, a man and a woman, both looking travel-worn and urgent. "Boss, these people need to see Mrs. Whitmore right away," Miguel called as they approached. "It's about Blackwood." Cole's blood ran cold. "What about Blackwood?" The male stranger spoke, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Name's Robert Grant. I'm Amelia's brother, and this is Sarah, Charles Blackwood's second wife. We've come to warn you, Blackwood's dead, but before he died, he put a price on Amelia's head." The words didn't make sense at first. Cole's mind struggled to process them, to understand what he was hearing. "Blackwood's dead? How? When?" 2 weeks ago, Sarah Blackwood said, her voice trembling. "He had a stroke, fell down the stairs at his Philadelphia house and broke his neck. He died within hours, but before he lost consciousness, he told his lawyer to hire men to bring Amelia back by any means necessary. Said she'd humiliated him, cost him his reputation, and he wanted her to pay for it even if he didn't live to see it." "That's insane," Cole said flatly. "A dead man can't hire bounty hunters." "But his estate can," Robert Grant said grimly. "The lawyer has access to Blackwood's funds to execute the terms of his will until everything's settled. Apparently Blackwood left instructions that a significant sum should be used to retrieve Amelia and bring her before a judge on charges of breach of contract and theft." "Theft?" Amelia's voice came from behind them. Cole turned to see his wife approaching on foot, having apparently heard the commotion from the house. Her face was pale but composed, one hand resting protectively over her barely visible pregnancy. "I never stole anything from Charles Blackwood." "Amelia," Robert said, dismounting and moving toward his sister. I didn't know if you were even alive until I received Sarah's letter. When you disappeared, Uncle Edmund told everyone you'd gone west to become a mail-order bride, but he wouldn't say where. I've been searching for months." They embraced, Amelia's composure cracking as she clung to her brother. Cole saw the resemblance now. They had the same gray eyes, the same straight posture, the same air of quiet determination. "I'm sorry I didn't contact you," Amelia said, pulling back to look at Robert. "I was afraid Uncle Edmund would use you to find me. I couldn't risk it." "I understand. And I'm not angry." Robert's expression darkened. "But Amelia, this situation with Blackwood is serious. He's claiming you stole medical instruments and books belonging to Dr. Harrison's practice, items his son says you had no right to take." "Those instruments were given to me by Dr. Harrison himself before he died," Amelia said hotly. "He knew his son would throw them away or sell them. He wanted me to have them so I could continue practicing medicine. I have his letter saying so." "Do you still have the letter?" Sarah Blackwood asked. "Yes, it's in my medical trunk, locked away safely." Amelia looked at the woman who'd married her tormentor. "Why are you helping us? You were his wife." Sarah's face twisted with old pain. "I was his wife for 3 months. 3 months of control, manipulation, and violence that I barely escaped with my life. When he started talking about you, about tracking you down and making you pay for defying him, I realized you must have been smart enough to escape what I was too foolish to avoid. After he died, I found his correspondence with the lawyer, saw what he was planning. I couldn't let it happen, so I went to your uncle's house, found your brother, and told him everything." "Uncle Edmund?" Amelia asked Robert. "Did he—" "He tried to stop me from leaving to warn you," Robert said, his jaw tight with anger. "Said it was none of my business, that you'd made your choices and should face the consequences. We're not on speaking terms anymore." Cole had heard enough. "Everyone inside," he ordered. "We need to discuss this properly and figure out what we're dealing with. Amelia, you shouldn't be standing out here in the sun in your condition." They gathered around the kitchen table, Sarah and Robert accepting coffee gratefully, while Cole's mind raced through possibilities and problems. If Blackwood's estate was funding bounty hunters to bring Amelia back east, they could be arriving any time. And unlike Blackwood himself, professional bounty hunters wouldn't be deterred by a group of armed ranchers. They'd be patient, cunning, willing to wait for the perfect moment to strike. "What exactly are the charges against me?" Amelia asked, her hands wrapped around her own cup, though she wasn't drinking. "Breach of contract, the marriage agreement your uncle made with Blackwood," Robert said. "And theft of medical property. Harrison's son is supporting the theft charge, probably because Blackwood paid him to do so." "Both charges are ridiculous," Cole said. "Amelia was never legally bound to marry Blackwood, and she has proof the medical instruments were given to her. No judge would convict her of either charge." "Maybe not," Sarah said, "but that's not really the point. The point is to drag her back to Philadelphia, to destroy her reputation, to make her suffer. Even if she's eventually acquitted, the trial itself would accomplish Blackwood's revenge. Plus there's the matter of your pregnancy," Robert added, looking at his sister with concern. "Travel in your condition would be risky, especially if the bounty hunters aren't gentle about transporting you." Cole felt rage building in his chest, hot and fierce. "They're not taking her anywhere," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "I don't care what some dead man's lawyer thinks he can do. Amelia is my wife. She's carrying my child, and she's committed no crime. Anyone who tries to take her will have to go through me." "And me," Miguel said from the doorway. Cole turned to see his ranch hand standing there with Carson and Tommy behind him. "We heard enough to understand what's happening. Mrs. Whitmore stays here. That's not negotiable." "The whole territory will stand with you," Carson added. "Word of what's happening will spread, and every neighbor you've got will be watching for strangers. Bounty hunters might be good at what they do, but they're not invisible. Someone will spot them." Amelia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "No," she said, her voice shaking. "No, I won't let this happen. I won't let people get hurt trying to protect me from a dead man's spite. Robert, Sarah, thank you for warning us. But I think the best solution is for me to go back to Philadelphia voluntarily, face these ridiculous charges, prove my innocence, and end this." "Absolutely not," Cole said, standing to face her. "You're not going anywhere, especially not back to a place where Blackwood's money and influence could still hurt you." "Cole, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. he interrupted. What's unreasonable is expecting me to let my pregnant wife travel 2,000 miles to face trumped-up charges from a dead man. What's unreasonable is thinking I'd ever agree to that. It's my decision to make, Amelia said, her gray eyes flashing with determination and fear. My past, my problem, my choice. No. Cole took her hands, forcing himself to speak calmly despite the panic clawing at his chest. This stopped being just your problem the moment we got married. We're partners, Amelia. We face things together. That's what partnership means. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't want you to die protecting me from something that's my fault for not being braver, for running away instead of facing Blackwood when I should have. You did face him, Cole said gently. You faced him here, on this porch, in front of witnesses. You told him no clearly and definitively. You didn't run away, Amelia. You built a new life. There's a difference. Robert cleared his throat, cleared his. There might be another option, he said carefully. Sarah and I have been discussing this on the journey here. What if we go back to Philadelphia and fight the charges on Amelia's behalf? I'm her brother. I have standing to represent her interests, and Sarah is willing to testify about Blackwood's character, his history of violence, his obsession with controlling Amelia. Between us, we might be able to get the charges dismissed without Amelia ever having to appear. Can that work legally? Cole asked. It's unconventional, but it's possible, Robert said, especially if we can demonstrate that travel would endanger Amelia's health due to her pregnancy. And we'd have the advantage of Dr. Harrison's letter proving she had permission to take those medical instruments. You'd do that for me? Amelia asked her brother, fresh tears streaming down her face. Risk yourself going back to fight Blackwood's ghost? You're my sister, Robert said simply. I should have protected you when Uncle Edmund first started pressuring you about that marriage. I was too focused on my own life, my own concerns. Let me make up for that now. Let me fight this battle for you. Amelia looked at Cole, question and hope warring in her expression. He squeezed her hands gently. It's your choice, he said. But if you're asking my opinion, I think letting Robert and Sarah handle this is the best option. You stay here, safe, focused on your health and our baby. They go back east and dismantle Blackwood's revenge before it can hurt anyone. I agree, Sarah said. I need to return anyway to settle my own affairs and officially end my connection to Blackwood's estate. Working with Robert to clear your name would give me a way to strike back at the man who nearly destroyed me. Please, Amelia, let us do this. Amelia was quiet for a long moment, her hands trembling in Cole's grip. Then she nodded slowly. All right, she said, but I want updates. Regular letters telling me how things are progressing. And if it looks like this isn't working, if they insist I appear in person, then we'll face that when it comes, Cole said firmly. But for now, we let the people who love you fight this fight while you stay here and stay safe. Robert and Sarah stayed at the ranch for 3 days, gathering the evidence they'd need, Dr. Harrison's letter, testimonials from Amelia's patients about her medical competence, sworn statements from Cole and the neighbors about the confrontation with Blackwood. By the time they departed, heading back east with promises to write regularly, Cole felt cautiously optimistic that this latest threat might be dealt with without violence. But caution remained the watchword around the Whitmore ranch. Cole instituted new security measures, always making sure someone was watching the approaches to the property, keeping weapons close at hand, teaching Amelia how to fire a pistol despite her protests that she was a healer, not a fighter. You're both, Cole said as they practiced shooting at targets behind the barn. You can heal people and still protect yourself when necessary. Those aren't contradictory. I suppose not, Amelia said, squinting down the barrel at the target. She fired, the recoil making her stumble slightly. The shot went wide, missing the target entirely. You're tensing up right before you pull the trigger, Cole said, moving behind her to adjust her stance. Breathe out slowly as you squeeze. Don't jerk. Smooth and steady. She tried again, and this time the bullet hit the outer ring of the target. Better? Much better. Keep practicing. I'm not saying you'll ever be a sharpshooter, but I want you to be comfortable enough with a gun that you wouldn't hesitate to use one if you had to. Over the next weeks, as Amelia's pregnancy became more visible and her energy began to flag in the afternoon heat, they fell into new routines designed around her changing needs. She still saw patients, but Cole had taken over the more physically demanding aspects of ranch work that she'd sometimes helped with. He found himself doing more cooking as standing for long periods became uncomfortable for her. They hired a woman from town, Mrs. Chen, to come twice a week to help with laundry and heavy cleaning. The letters from Robert came regularly, as promised. The news was mixed, but trending positive. Robert had found a sympathetic judge who was willing to hear the case without requiring Amelia's presence given her pregnancy and the distance involved. Harrison's son had backed down from his theft claims when confronted with his father's letter and the threat of being sued for false accusations. The breach of contract charge was proving harder to dismiss, but Robert was confident it would eventually be thrown out. He says it could be resolved within 2 months, Amelia said one evening in early August, reading the latest letter while Cole rubbed her swollen feet. 2 months, and this whole nightmare could be over. That would be good timing, Cole said. You're due in early December. Having this settled well before the baby comes would ease both our minds. Amelia set the letter aside, her hand moving to her belly where their child had started to kick with increasing vigor. Feel this? She said, guiding Cole's hand to a spot where movement was visible beneath her dress. The baby's active tonight. Cole felt the flutter beneath his palm and experienced a surge of emotion so intense it almost hurt. That was his child, alive and growing, real in a way that had seemed abstract before this moment. Hello in there, he said softly. Your mama and I can't wait to meet you. You're going to be such a good father, Amelia said, her eyes shining with tears. Pregnancy had made her more emotional, quicker to cry at both joy and sorrow. I hope so, Cole said honestly. I'm terrified of failing, of not knowing what to do, of making mistakes that hurt our child. We'll make mistakes, Amelia said. All parents do. But we'll make them together, and we'll fix them together, and our child will know they're loved. That's what matters most. They sat together in the quiet evening, feeling their baby move, planning for a future that finally felt secure. The ranch was profitable. Amelia's medical practice was established. Their marriage was strong. They'd survived Blackwood's attacks, the harsh winter, the challenges of frontier life. Surely the worst was behind them. But Montana Territory, as Cole had learned over the years, had a cruel sense of timing. The trouble came on a sweltering afternoon in mid-August, when Amelia was 5 months pregnant and beginning to move with the careful deliberation of someone aware of the precious cargo she carried. Cole was in the barn shoeing a horse when he heard shouting from the direction of the house. He dropped his tools and ran, his heart hammering with instant dread. As he rounded the corner, he saw Amelia standing on the porch facing a group of 5 men on horseback. Even from a distance, Cole could see the hard professional look about them. These were bounty hunters, and they'd come for his wife. Mrs. Whitmore? The lead man was saying as Cole approached, his hand already on his pistol. Or should I say Miss Grant? We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of theft and breach of contract. You need to come with us back to Philadelphia. I don't think so, Cole said, positioning himself between the men and Amelia. My wife isn't going anywhere with you. The lead bounty hunter's eyes flicked to Cole dismissively. This is a legal matter, friend. We have paperwork from a Philadelphia court. You interfere, you'll be charged with obstruction. That paperwork isn't worth the paper it's printed on in Montana Territory, Cole said, his voice deadly calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. And if you try to take my pregnant wife anywhere against her will, you'll find out exactly what Montana justice looks like. Cole, Amelia said softly behind him. Maybe I should just... No, he said without turning. You're not going with them. We have legal representation handling this back east. These men are trying to circumvent the proper legal process by taking you before the case can be heard. The bounty hunter's hand moved toward his gun, and suddenly the situation exploded into motion. Cole drew faster, his shot hitting the ground inches from the man's horse, making the animal rear and nearly throw its rider. From the barn and bunkhouse, Miguel, Carson, Tommy, and Joe appeared with rifles raised, surrounding the bounty hunters. You're outnumbered and outgunned, Cole said, his pistol now trained on the lead man's chest. And you're trespassing on private property. I suggest you leave before the situation gets worse. This isn't over, the bounty hunter snarled, fighting to control his spooked horse. We're legally authorized to retrieve Miss Grant by any means necessary. Actually, you're not, a new voice said. Cole turned his head slightly to see Eleanor Saunders, the territorial health official, riding up with a man in a marshal's uniform beside her. Marshal Tucker and I received word that bounty hunters might be heading this way. We came to make sure everyone understood the legal situation. Marshal Tucker, a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes, addressed the bounty hunters. That warrant you're carrying has no authority in Montana territory. The case is still being heard in Philadelphia, and until there's a conviction, which there won't be based on what I've heard, Mrs. Whitmore is free to remain here. Any attempt to remove her by force will result in kidnapping charges against all of you. Am I making myself clear? The bounty hunters exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. Finally, the leader spat on the ground. We'll be back with proper territorial authorization. You do that, Marshal Tucker said. And when you can't get it because there's no legal basis for Mrs. Whitmore's arrest, maybe you'll accept that this job isn't worth whatever Blackwood's estate is paying you. They left, but the threat hung in the air like storm clouds. Cole watched them disappear down the road before finally lowering his weapon, his hands shaking with reaction now that the immediate danger had passed. Thank you, he said to Marshal Tucker and Mrs. Saunders. How did you know to come? Your brother-in-law sent a telegram to every law enforcement office between here and Philadelphia, warning that bounty hunters might try to circumvent the legal process, Mrs. Saunders explained. Marshal Tucker and I decided to make sure Mrs. Whitmore was protected. She's too valuable to this territory to lose to some dead man's vendetta. You need to be more careful, Marshal Tucker said, looking at Amelia with concern. These men won't give up easily. The bounty must be substantial if they traveled this far. You should consider staying close to the house, maybe even arranging for armed guards until this legal matter is fully resolved. I can arrange that, Cole said immediately. Whatever it takes to keep her safe. But that night, as they lay in bed with Cole's arms wrapped protectively around Amelia and their baby, the strain was beginning to show. Amelia was quiet, withdrawn in a way she hadn't been since the early days after Blackwood's first attack. Talk to me, Cole said softly. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking that I'm tired, Amelia said, her voice muffled against his chest. Tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of wondering when the next attack is coming. I'm thinking that maybe I should just go back to Philadelphia and face this so it can finally be over. Amelia, I know what you're going to say, she interrupted. That it's not safe, that the travel could hurt the baby, that I should let Robert handle it. But Cole, I can't live like this. Constantly afraid, constantly looking over my shoulder, knowing that people are getting hurt trying to protect me. That's not living. That's just surviving, and I'm so tired of just surviving. Cole felt his heart break at the defeat in her voice. This woman who'd been so strong, so capable, so determined, she was being worn down by relentless attacks from a man who couldn't even pursue her in person anymore, only through the poison he'd left behind. What if there was another way? Cole asked slowly, an idea forming. What if instead of you going to Philadelphia, we bring Philadelphia here? What do you mean? I mean, we force the issue. We get a territorial judge to hear the case here, with Robert presenting the evidence by proxy or even traveling here to represent you in person. We make them come to us on our ground, where we have the advantage, and you're surrounded by people who will protect you. We turn this from a defensive battle to an offensive one. Amelia pulled back to look at him, hope kindling in her eyes. Can we do that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Cole kissed her forehead. You've spent months healing this territory, saving lives, building something important. It's time the territory returned the favor and protected you. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to Marshal Tucker and everyone else with influence I can find. We're going to end this, Amelia, but we're going to do it here, where you're safe. The next week was a flurry of activity as Cole made good on his promise. He rode to Helena to meet with territorial officials, called in favors from every rancher and businessman he'd ever done good trade with, even got Mrs. Saunders to write an official letter on Territorial Health Board letterhead explaining why Amelia's presence was crucial to the medical well-being of the region. The response was overwhelming. People Cole barely knew stepped forward to help, offering testimony about Amelia's character, pledging money for legal fees, volunteering to travel to Philadelphia if needed to support Robert's case. The territory was closing ranks around one of their own, and the message was clear. Amelia Whitmore wasn't going anywhere. Robert's next letter brought the breakthrough they'd been hoping for. The Philadelphia judge, faced with the territorial judge's demands for proper legal process and Robert's mountain of evidence proving Amelia's innocence, had dismissed all charges. The breach of contract claim was thrown out as having no legal basis, and the theft charges were dropped when it became clear Dr. Harrison had gifted those instruments to Amelia. Blackwood's estate was ordered to cease all harassment and pay Robert's legal fees. It was over. Finally, truly over. Amelia cried when Cole read her the letter, great shaking sobs of relief that had been building for months. He held her through it, his own eyes wet, feeling like they'd finally stepped out of a shadow that had been following them since the day they'd met. "It's done," she kept saying. "It's really done. We're free." "We're free," Cole agreed. "No more looking over our shoulders, no more fear. Just us, our baby, and the life we're building together." That evening, they celebrated with their ranch hands and the neighbors who'd stood by them. Martha Henderson brought a cake, Ben brought whiskey, and the Porters arrived with their children to share in the joy. There was music and laughter, and for the first time in months, the Whitmore Ranch felt purely happy, untainted by threat or worry. As the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Cole found Amelia sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of orange and purple. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Exhausted, relieved, happy." She leaned against his shoulder, "And grateful. For you, for the life we've built, for the people who stood with us. I came here thinking I was running away from my problems, but I actually ran toward the solution. I ran toward home." "You ran toward me," Cole said, "and I don't think I truly understood what that meant until now. You gave up everything you knew, traveled across the country, married a stranger, all on faith that it would work out. That takes courage I'm not sure I could have matched." "You did match it," Amelia said. "You opened your home to someone you'd never met. You supported my work even when it was inconvenient. You stood between me and people who wanted to hurt me. You loved me not despite my independence, but because of it. That takes courage too, Cole. Maybe even more courage than what I showed." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, feeling peace settle over them like a blanket. The baby kicked, a strong movement that made Amelia wince and Cole smile. "Active tonight," he observed. "Very active. I think the baby knows we're finally safe, finally free to just be a family." Amelia placed her hand over Cole's where it rested on her belly. "Whatever happens from here, we face it together. No more secrets, no more fear, just partnership." "Just partnership," Cole echoed. "And love. Don't forget love." "How could I forget love?" Amelia asked, turning to kiss him softly. "Love is what brought us here. Love is what kept us fighting. Love is what's going to carry us forward." As summer faded into autumn and Amelia's pregnancy progressed into its final months, the Whitmore Ranch settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and right. Cole prepared for winter while also preparing for fatherhood, reading books on child rearing that Amelia ordered from back east, converting the smallest upstairs bedroom into a nursery with help from Carson, who proved surprisingly skilled at woodworking. Amelia continued her medical work, but at a reduced pace, training Mrs. Chen to help with basic nursing care so she'd have assistance once the baby came. The clinic had become such an established part of the territory's infrastructure that the territorial government allocated funds to purchase additional supplies and equipment, an official recognition of Amelia's value that made Cole almost as proud as Amelia herself. In October, with Amelia 7 months pregnant and the first snow beginning to dust the mountain peaks, they received a final letter from Robert. He and Sarah had married in Philadelphia and were planning to move west themselves, seeking the same fresh start that Amelia had found. They'd arrive in Montana before winter closed the passes, Robert wrote, hoping to find land near Cole and Amelia where they could establish their own ranch. "Your brother's coming here," Cole said, looking up from the letter. "How do you feel about that?" "Happy," Amelia said without hesitation. "Robert's the only family I have left who matters. Having him close, building our lives in proximity to each other, that sounds wonderful. And Sarah deserves a chance to start over somewhere. Blackwood's ghost can't reach her." "Then we'll help them find good land and get established," Cole said. Family looks after family. The words resonated with truth. They'd both come from broken or complicated family situations, But they were building something new together. A family based not on obligation or blood debt, but on choice, on mutual support, on love freely given and gratefully received. November brought serious snow, locking the ranch in winter's embrace. The cattle were brought close, the hay stores were checked and rechecked, the house was weatherproofed against the cold. Amelia, now 8 months pregnant and moving with increasing difficulty, spent most of her time in the house, sewing baby clothes and organizing the nursery with Martha's help. The midwife from Helena, Mrs. Kowalski, arrived in early November as planned and settled into the guest room. She was a stout woman in her 60s with capable hands and a no-nonsense manner that immediately put both Cole and Amelia at ease. "I've delivered over 300 babies," she told them bluntly. "Lost only 2 mothers and 5 infants, and those were all cases with complications that no one could have prevented. Your wife is young, healthy, and has good wide hips. Barring the unexpected, she should have a straightforward delivery." "And if there are complications?" Cole asked, needing to hear the answer even though it terrified him. "Then you're fortunate your wife is medically trained," Mrs. Kowalski said. "Between the 2 of us, we can handle most anything that might arise. Stop worrying, Mr. Whitmore. Worry doesn't help anything. Trust that the women in your life know what we're doing." Cole tried to take that advice to heart as December arrived and Amelia's due date approached. But the fear remained, living in his chest like a physical weight. He'd lost so much already. The thought of losing Amelia, of their child growing up without the mother who'd fought so hard to build a life worth living, it was almost more than he could bear to contemplate. On a frigid morning 2 weeks before Christmas, with snow falling thick outside and the house warm with fires in every room, Amelia woke Cole before dawn with a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's time," she said calmly. "The contractions started about an hour ago. They're still far apart, but this is definitely labor." Cole was out of bed instantly, his heart racing. "I'll get Mrs. Kowalski. Do you need anything? Water? Should you be lying down? Should I—" "Cole?" Amelia caught his hand, squeezing gently. "Breathe. This is normal. This is natural. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I'm going to be fine, and so is our child, but I need you to stay calm and trust the process." He forced himself to breathe, to think clearly instead of panicking. "Right, okay. I'll get the midwife and Martha. I sent word yesterday that we'd need her soon. And I'll heat water and make sure we have everything you might need." "That's perfect," Amelia said, kissing him softly. "I love you. And in a few hours, we're going to meet our baby." What followed was the longest day of Cole's life. He'd thought facing down Blackwood's hired guns had been terrifying, but it was nothing compared to this. Listening to Amelia's labor pains intensify as the day wore on, knowing she was suffering and being helpless to ease it, waiting for the moment when their child would finally arrive and he'd know they'd both survived. Mrs. Kowalski and Martha had taken over the bedroom, both women calm and efficient as they helped Amelia through labor. Cole stayed mostly in the hallway outside, alternately pacing and sitting, occasionally allowed in to hold Amelia's hand during the worst contractions. Each time he saw her face tight with pain, he wanted to take it from her, bear it himself, do anything to ease her suffering. "This is the hardest part," Martha told him during one of his visits, "but she's doing beautifully. Strong contractions, good progress. It won't be much longer now." Cole was in the kitchen when he heard the baby's first cry, a strong, healthy wail that cut through the house and straight into his heart. He was moving before he'd consciously decided to, taking the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into the bedroom to find Amelia propped up against pillows, her face exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "It's a girl," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Cole, we have a daughter." He moved to the bed as if in a dream, sitting carefully beside Amelia and looking down at the impossibly small face of his child. She had a shock of dark hair and eyes squeezed tight against the light, her tiny fists waving as she cried. "She's perfect," Cole whispered, unable to speak any louder through the emotion choking his throat. "She's absolutely perfect." "Do you want to hold her?" Amelia asked, already shifting to place the baby in his arms. Cole took his daughter with shaking hands, cradling her weight against his chest. She quieted at the contact, her crying subsiding to small hiccuping sounds. He stared at her, this person who was part of him and part of Amelia, this new life they'd created together, and felt his entire world realign around this tiny being. "Hello," he said softly. "Hello, little one. I'm your papa, and I promise that I will love you and protect you and do everything in my power to make sure you grow up happy and safe and free to be whoever you want to be." "What should we name her?" Amelia asked, her hand resting on Cole's arm. They'd discussed names but never quite settled on one, wanting to wait until they met their child. Now, looking at this perfect little girl, Cole knew exactly what her name should be. "Grace," he said. "Her name is Grace. Because that's what she is. Grace we didn't earn but were given anyway. A gift we didn't deserve but somehow received." "Grace Whitmore," Amelia said, testing the name. "Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly who she is." They sat together, the three of them, as snow continued to fall outside and the Montana winter held the world in its frozen embrace. But inside the Whitmore ranch house, there was only warmth, joy, and the fierce love of parents looking at their child for the first time. Cole thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a simple advertisement for a mail-order bride to this moment of perfect fulfillment. He'd been so afraid of love, so convinced it would destroy him. But what he'd learned instead was that love didn't destroy, fear destroyed. Love, real love, built something stronger than any individual could build alone. He looked at his wife, this remarkable woman who'd answered his advertisement and changed his entire life, and then at his daughter, this new person who represented their future and their hope. And he knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever trials the frontier or life or fate threw at them, they would face it together. The lonely cowboy wasn't lonely anymore. He had a family. He had love. He had home. And home, Cole had finally learned, wasn't a place. It was the people you chose to stand beside, the ones who stood beside you in return. It was partnership and respect and fierce loyalty. It was this woman, this child, this life they were building together against all odds. It was everything he'd never known he needed, delivered to his door in a blue traveling dress and a letter promising practicality instead of romance. Thank God, Cole thought, kissing first his daughter's forehead and then his wife's lips, for the beautiful impracticality of love. For the glorious unpredictability of two people finding each other despite every reason they shouldn't work. For grace unearned but gratefully received. Thank God for home. The first weeks with Grace were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love, of learning how to care for this tiny person who depended on them completely. Cole discovered depths of tenderness in himself he hadn't known existed, finding himself mesmerized by the way Grace's fingers would curl around his thumb, the small sounds she made while sleeping, the way her eyes would search for Amelia's face when she was hungry. Amelia recovered from the birth with remarkable speed, though Mrs. Kowalski stayed for 2 weeks to ensure there were no complications. The midwife taught Cole how to change diapers, how to swaddle properly, how to support Grace's head when holding her. By the time Mrs. Kowalski departed, Cole felt slightly less terrified of accidentally breaking his daughter, though he still handled her with exaggerated care that made Amelia smile. "She's sturdier than she looks," Amelia assured him one evening as he held Grace while she slept, afraid to move lest he wake her. "Babies are surprisingly resilient." "I know that intellectually," Cole said, gazing down at his daughter's peaceful face. "But when I'm holding her, all I can think about is how small she is, how vulnerable. The world suddenly seems so much more dangerous than it did before she was born." "Welcome to parenthood," Amelia said with gentle amusement, "where every sharp corner becomes a hazard and every cough sounds like potential disaster. It gets easier as they grow, or so Martha tells me. We learn to trust that they'll survive our inevitable mistakes." Christmas came quietly that year, celebrated just the three of them with gifts exchanged by the fire while Grace slept in the cradle Carson had built. Cole gave Amelia a medical text she'd mentioned wanting, and she gave him a leather journal for recording ranch business, and, she said pointedly, his thoughts on fatherhood so Grace could someday read about these early days. "I'm not much of a writer," Cole protested. "Then it's fortunate you married someone who can help you find the words," Amelia said, kissing him. "Our daughter deserves to know how much she was wanted, how loved she was from the moment we knew she existed. Write it down, Cole. Years from now, when she's grown and we're old, Those words will matter. So Cole began writing in the journal, awkward entries at first that gradually became more fluid as he found his voice. He wrote about Grace's first smile, the way she'd grip his finger with surprising strength, the fierce protectiveness that welled up in him every time he looked at her. He wrote about Amelia's transformation into motherhood, how she managed to balance caring for Grace with her medical work, seeing patients in the clinic while Grace napped or feeding their daughter while consulting with patients about their ailments. The winter passed in this cocoon of new family, the harsh weather keeping them close to home and focused on each other. But as January gave way to February and the days began imperceptibly lengthening, the outside world started intruding again with news both good and complicated. Robert and Sarah arrived on a bitter February morning, their wagon loaded with their possessions and their faces showing the wear of a difficult journey. But when Robert saw his sister holding her baby, his weathered expression softened into pure joy. "Amelia," he said, embracing her carefully so as not to jostle Grace. "You look happy. Actually, genuinely happy. I don't think I've seen you like this since before Mother died." "I am happy," Amelia said simply. "Robert, Sarah, meet your niece, Grace." Sarah, who'd been quiet and almost fearful when she'd first visited to warn them about Blackwood, seemed transformed. Marriage to Robert had softened something in her, brought color back to her cheeks and light back to her eyes. She cooed over Grace with the kind of longing that made Amelia exchange meaningful glances with Cole. They stayed in the main house while Cole helped Robert scout for land. Over evening meals, the four adults talked about the future they were building. Robert wanted to start a horse ranch, breeding and training animals for the growing demand as more settlers arrived in Montana. Sarah spoke tentatively about possibly learning medicine from Amelia, wanting to be useful and having nowhere else to direct the intelligence Blackwood had tried so hard to suppress. "I'd be happy to teach you," Amelia said warmly, "and honestly, I could use the help. Between Grace and the number of patients I'm seeing, having someone I trust to assist with basic care would be invaluable." "You'd trust me?" Sarah asked, something vulnerable in her voice. "After everything? After being married to him?" "You were his victim, not his accomplice," Amelia said firmly. "And you risked yourself to warn us, helped Robert clear my name. Of course I trust you. We're family now, Sarah. That means something out here." Over the next weeks, they found Robert and Sarah good land about 3 miles east of the Whitmore Ranch, close enough to help each other, far enough for independence. Cole loaned Robert money to get started and sent Carson and Miguel to help with the initial building. A pattern emerged of shared labor and mutual support, the two families beginning to form the nucleus of a real community. It was during this period of relative peace and productivity that Martha Henderson arrived one morning with news that made everyone go still. "There's a man in town asking questions about the Whitmore Ranch," Martha said, without preamble. "Specifically about Mrs. Whitmore's medical practice. He's not from around here, speaks with an Eastern accent, carries himself like he has authority. Marshall Tucker is keeping an eye on him, but I thought you should know." Cole felt old protectiveness surge up instantly. "Did he give a name?" "Said he's Dr. Theodore Walsh, representing some medical association back east." Martha's expression was troubled. "He's been talking to people Amelia has treated, asking about her qualifications, her methods, whether she's ever claimed to be a licensed physician." Amelia had gone pale, one hand instinctively moving to where Grace slept in her cradle. "They're questioning my right to practice. After everything we've been through, now the medical establishment is coming for me." "We don't know that's what this is," Cole said, though his gut told him Amelia was probably right. "Maybe he's just curious. Maybe—" "Cole, men like that don't travel 2,000 miles out of curiosity," Amelia interrupted. "They come to shut down what they see as irregular practices, to enforce the rules that say women can't practice medicine without licenses they're not allowed to obtain. I knew this was coming eventually. I just hoped we'd have more time." "You're not stopping your work," Cole said flatly. "I don't care what some Eastern doctor says. This territory needs you." "What the territory needs and what's legally permitted might be two different things," Amelia said, her voice heavy with defeat. "If he has the authority to shut down my practice, if he can charge me with practicing medicine without a license, Cole, I could face fines or even jail time." "Not in Montana you won't," Robert said firmly from where he'd been listening. "The Territorial Health Board has officially recognized you as a medical consultant. That carries legal weight." Does it carry enough legal weight to counter an Eastern Medical Association with political connections? Amelia asked. I'm not so sure. The answer came 2 days later when Dr. Theodore Walsh arrived at the Whitmore Ranch in an official capacity, accompanied by Marshall Tucker, who looked distinctly uncomfortable with the situation. Walsh was a thin man in his 50s with wire spectacles and the pinched expression of someone who'd smelled something unpleasant. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, his tone professionally cool. I'm Dr. Theodore Walsh from the American Medical Association. I've been authorized to investigate reports that you've been practicing medicine in Montana Territory without proper credentials. I've been providing medical care as a trained physician's assistant, Amelia corrected, her chin raised defiantly, even as Cole saw her hands trembling. I make no claims to be a licensed physician. I simply use the skills I was taught to help people who have no other options for care. Be that as it may, the association has concerns about unlicensed medical practice, particularly by women who lack proper oversight. Walsh pulled out a document. I'm authorized to issue a cease and desist order requiring you to immediately stop all medical activities until your qualifications can be properly reviewed and certified. That could take months, Cole said, stepping forward. Maybe years. In the meantime, people in this territory will suffer and die from conditions my wife could treat. You're really going to let that happen? I'm going to ensure medical practice meets appropriate standards, Walsh said stiffly. Frontier sentimentality doesn't change the need for proper regulation. Marshall, Cole said, turning to Tucker, does he have the legal authority to enforce this? Marshall Tucker sighed heavily. It's complicated. The territorial government recognizes Mrs. Whitmore's work, but the federal government defers to medical associations on questions of licensure. If the association says she can't practice, I might have to enforce that. Might have to? Cole pressed. There's some ambiguity in the law, Tucker admitted, and I'd be inclined to interpret that ambiguity in favor of someone who saved as many lives as Mrs. Whitmore has. But if Dr. Walsh pushes this and gets federal backing, my hands might be tied. This is ridiculous, Robert said. My sister has training that exceeds most frontier doctors. She's saved dozens of lives, and you want to stop her because of bureaucratic rules written by men who've never set foot in Montana. I want to maintain standards that protect the public, Walsh countered. Your sister may be competent, or she may be a danger to her patients. Without proper review, there's no way to know. Then review her, Amelia said suddenly, her voice clear and strong. Right now. Test my knowledge, examine my techniques, interview my patients. I'll submit to whatever examination you require. But do it here, do it quickly, and if I pass your standards, you leave me alone to do my work. Walsh looked taken aback. That's, highly irregular. So is traveling 2,000 miles to harass a woman who's committed no crime, Amelia shot back. You want to ensure I'm competent? Fine. Prove I'm not. But do it fairly, and do it now, because every day you delay is another day people might suffer because I'm not available to help them. Something shifted in Walsh's expression. Respect, perhaps, or at least recognition that he was dealing with someone formidable. Very well, he said. I'll conduct an examination of your knowledge and skills. If you demonstrate sufficient competency, I'll recommend to the association that you be granted a provisional license to practice in Montana Territory under supervision. Whose supervision? Cole asked, suspiciously. Mine, for the duration of my stay in the territory, Walsh said, which will be approximately 2 weeks. If Mrs. Whitmore performs adequately during that time, I'll support her application for full licensure as a frontier medical practitioner, a new classification the association is considering for isolated areas where traditional licensing is impractical. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than an outright prohibition. Amelia agreed immediately, and for the next 2 weeks, Dr. Walsh became an unwelcome fixture around the Whitmore Ranch. He observed Amelia treating patients, questioned her about anatomy and pharmacology, reviewed her medical records with meticulous attention to detail. Cole watched it all with barely suppressed fury, hating the way Walsh treated his wife like a student being examined rather than a professional with years of experience. But Amelia bore it with grace and confidence, answering every question, explaining every decision, demonstrating her knowledge and skill with quiet authority. And gradually, Cole saw Walsh's skepticism transform into something approaching respect. The turning point came during the second week when a rancher named Thomas Kieran arrived with his teenage son who'd been gored by a bull. The boy's abdomen was torn open, his intestines visible, blood soaking through the makeshift bandages his father had applied. It was the kind of injury that would be challenging for any doctor, even in a well-equipped hospital. "He needs surgery immediately, or he'll die," Amelia said after one look. "Dr. Walsh, you're welcome to assist or observe, but I need to operate now." Walsh hesitated only a moment before nodding. "I'll assist. Tell me what you need." What followed was 2 hours of intense surgical work, Amelia's hands moving with absolute precision as she repaired damaged intestines, cleaned the abdominal cavity, and carefully closed the wound in layers. Walsh assisted competently, but even he couldn't hide his admiration for Amelia's technique, her anatomical knowledge, her calm focus under pressure. When it was over and the boy was resting comfortably with his father hovering nearby, Walsh cleaned his instruments in thoughtful silence. Finally, he spoke. "That was exceptional work, Mrs. Whitmore. I've seen trained surgeons in Philadelphia hospitals who couldn't have done better. Where did you learn abdominal surgery?" "Dr. Harrison believed in teaching by doing," Amelia said, exhaustion evident in her voice now that the crisis had passed. "He had me assist with increasingly complex procedures over my 6 years with him. He said the frontier would need doctors willing to handle anything, and he wanted to prepare me for that reality. He prepared you well." Walsh removed his glasses, cleaning them with a cloth. "Mrs. Whitmore, I came here expecting to find a dabbler, possibly even a charlatan taking advantage of desperate people. Instead, I found a medical practitioner with skills that would be valuable anywhere and are absolutely essential here. I'm going to recommend not just provisional licensure, but full recognition as a frontier medical practitioner with surgical privileges. You've more than earned it." The relief that washed over Amelia's face made Cole's chest tight. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank you for being willing to see past your initial assumptions." "Thank you for proving me wrong," Walsh said. "It's a rare pleasure to be so thoroughly mistaken." True to his word, Dr. Walsh departed 2 days later with a glowing report recommending Amelia's full licensure. The official documentation arrived 6 weeks later, a certificate recognizing Amelia Whitmore as a licensed frontier medical practitioner authorized to practice general medicine and surgery throughout Montana Territory. "You did it," Cole said, looking at the certificate with fierce pride. "You're official now, legal, recognized." "We did it," Amelia corrected, pulling him close. "Every step of this journey, you've been beside me, supporting my work, defending my right to practice, believing in me when others didn't. This isn't just my achievement, Cole. It's ours." Spring arrived in earnest, bringing with it the rebirth of the land and a sense of new beginnings. Grace was 4 months old now, starting to smile and laugh, her personality emerging in ways that delighted both her parents. Robert and Sarah's ranch was taking shape, their house built, and their first horses purchased. The community that had rallied to protect Amelia now rallied to help the new ranch get established, everyone contributing labor or materials or advice. It was during a community gathering in late April, a celebration of Robert and Sarah's house raising, that Cole found himself standing on the porch of the new building, looking out over the assembled neighbors and feeling something profound settle in his chest. This was what his parents had dreamed of when they dragged him west all those years ago. Not just a successful ranch, but a real community built on mutual support and shared values. People working together, protecting each other, celebrating each other's victories, and supporting each other through trials. His father would have loved this, Cole thought. His mother, too. Amelia came to stand beside him, Grace sleeping against her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "My parents," Cole said, "about how they'd be proud of what we've built here. Not just the ranch, but this," he gestured at the gathering, "all of this. Family, community, connection. It's what they wanted but didn't live long enough to see." "They'd be proud of you," Amelia said softly. "Of the man you've become, the father you are, the life you're building. And Cole, I think they'd be grateful that you found love instead of running from it. That you were brave enough to risk your heart despite knowing how much it could hurt to lose what you love." Cole pulled her close, careful not to jostle Grace. "I was so afraid," he admitted. "When I placed that advertisement, I was trying to find safety and practicality. I thought I could have partnership without risk, companionship without vulnerability. I was so wrong." Were you? Amelia asked. We started as a practical arrangement. We both went into it trying to protect ourselves. But the beauty is that we grew beyond that. We chose each other again and again, not because we were obligated to, but because we wanted to. I choose you every day, Cole said. Every single day, I wake up and choose you, choose this, choose us. That's what makes it real. I choose you too, Amelia said, standing on her toes to kiss him. Every day, every moment, for the rest of our lives. The celebration continued into the evening, with music and food and laughter that echoed across the Montana landscape. Cole held his daughter while Amelia danced with her brother, watching the joy on both their faces and feeling his heart so full it almost hurt. This was happiness, he realized, not the absence of pain or fear or challenge, but the presence of love strong enough to weather those storms. As summer approached, bringing with it the busy season of ranch work and medical calls, Cole and Amelia settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and right. They'd learned how to balance their various responsibilities: ranch, medical practice, parenting, marriage. Not perfectly, but well enough. There were still hard days, still moments of stress or disagreement or exhaustion. But they faced those moments together, and that made all the difference. One particularly hot evening in July, after Grace had been put to bed and the house was finally quiet, Cole found Amelia in the clinic organizing supplies. He leaned against the doorframe just watching her work, the way her hands moved with practiced efficiency, the small furrow between her brows when she was concentrating, the way she'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear absently. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Cole said. "A year and a half ago, I was standing on that porch watching for the stagecoach, nervous about meeting the woman I'd agreed to marry sight unseen. I thought I knew what I was getting, a practical arrangement, a business partnership. I had no idea I was about to meet the love of my life." Amelia's eyes softened. "I was terrified on that stagecoach," she admitted. "Terrified I'd made a terrible mistake, that I'd traded one trap for another. When I stepped off and saw you standing there, so serious and guarded, I almost got back on and rode away." "What stopped you?" Cole asked, curious. He'd never heard this before. "Your eyes," Amelia said simply. "When my trunk spilled and you saw the medical books, your eyes lit up. Not with judgment or dismissal, but with recognition, understanding. I saw in that moment that maybe you'd see me as more than just a wife. And I thought maybe, just maybe, this could work." "It more than worked," Cole said, moving into the clinic and pulling her into his arms. "It exceeded every hope I didn't know I had." They stood together in the quiet clinic, holding each other as the Montana night settled around them, and Cole thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. All the fear and risk, the danger and triumph, the ways they'd been tested and the ways they'd grown. Every challenge had made them stronger. Every trial had deepened their bond. In late August, word came that the territorial government was establishing an official medical board to oversee healthcare across Montana, and Amelia was invited to serve as one of its founding members. It was recognition beyond anything she'd dared dream, not just permission to practice, but a voice in shaping policy for the entire territory. "You have to accept," Cole said when she showed him the letter. "This is history, Amelia. You'll be helping build the framework for medicine in Montana for generations to come." "It will mean travel to Helena several times a year," Amelia said. "Meetings, consultations, time away from home." "Then we'll manage," Cole said firmly. "Grace and I will be fine for a few days at a time, and the work you'll be doing is too important to pass up. You know that." Amelia accepted the position, and over the following months she began attending meetings in Helena, consulting with other medical professionals, helping draft standards for medical practice across the territory. Each time she returned home, she'd share stories of the work they were doing, establishing protocols for midwifery, creating a system for distributing medical supplies to remote areas, training local people in basic health care. "We're building something that will outlast us," she told Cole one evening as they reviewed her notes from the latest meeting. "Creating infrastructure that will help people for decades. It's extraordinary to be part of that." "You're extraordinary," Cole said. "You came here as a mail-order bride running from danger. Now you're shaping territorial policy and saving lives on a scale you never could have managed in Boston. You've built something remarkable, Amelia." We've built it, she corrected, as she always did. None of this would have been possible without your support. As autumn painted the landscape in shades of gold and red, the Whitmore Ranch prepared for another winter. But this year felt different from the last, less anxious, more confident. They'd proven they could survive Montana's harsh seasons. They'd faced external threats and emerged stronger. They'd built a life that was both challenging and deeply fulfilling. Grace was nearly a year old now, pulling herself up on furniture and taking tentative steps while holding onto adult hands. Watching her grow, seeing pieces of both himself and Amelia in their daughter's personality, filled Cole with a contentment so profound it sometimes brought tears to his eyes. On a crisp October morning, Cole was working in the barn when he heard Grace's excited babbling from the house. He set down his tools and headed inside to find Amelia sitting on the floor with their daughter, both of them laughing as Grace took wobbling steps between her mother's hands and the sofa. "She's almost walking on her own," Amelia said, her face glowing with pride. "Watch, Grace, come to Mama." Grace let go of the sofa, standing independently for a moment before taking 3 lurching steps toward Amelia and falling into her mother's arms with triumphant squeals. Cole felt his heart expand impossibly larger, filled with love for these 2 people who'd become his entire world. "She's going to be walking everywhere before we know it," he said, sitting down beside them, then running, then causing all kinds of trouble. "Good," Amelia said, kissing Grace's dark hair. "Let her cause trouble. Let her be bold and curious and adventurous. Let her know that her parents will support her no matter what she chooses to do with her life." "Even if she wants to be a doctor like her mother?" Cole asked. "Especially if she wants to be a doctor," Amelia said firmly, "though I hope by the time she's grown, it won't be the fight for women that it was for me. I hope we're building a world where her gender doesn't limit her opportunities." "We're trying," Cole said. "Every time someone sees you succeeding, sees you saving lives and contributing to the territory, we're changing minds. Grace will grow up in a world you're helping create." That evening, after Grace was asleep and they were sitting by the fire as had become their cherished routine, Amelia placed Cole's hand on her stomach with a small smile. "I have something to tell you," she said. "We're going to have another baby. I'm about 2 months along." Joy surged through Cole, mixed with the inevitable flash of fear that came with any pregnancy after having experienced childbirth once. "You're sure you're feeling all right?" "I'm sure, and I'm fine," Amelia assured him. "A little tired, some morning sickness, but nothing concerning. And before you start worrying, yes, I'll be careful. Yes, I'll reduce my workload as the pregnancy progresses. Yes, I remember everything I learned with Grace. We know how to do this now, Cole." "We do," Cole agreed, pulling her close. "We're going to be parents again. Grace is going to be a big sister." "Are you happy?" Amelia asked, searching his face. "I'm terrified and thrilled in equal measure," Cole said honestly. "Just like last time. But yes, I'm happy. Our family is growing, Amelia. We're building exactly the life I never knew I wanted." They sat together planning for the future, where they'd put another cradle, how they'd manage 2 children, what names they might consider. The conversation was easy, comfortable, full of hope and affection. This was partnership, Cole thought. This was love. Not the all-consuming attachment that had destroyed his mother, but a love that enhanced both their lives while leaving them intact as individuals. Winter arrived right on schedule, bringing snow and cold, but no longer bringing the fear that had accompanied previous winters. They were prepared now, experienced, confident in their ability to handle whatever the season threw at them. The ranch ran smoothly under Cole's management. Amelia's medical practice continued even through the worst weather, with patients coming to the house when roads allowed, and Grace thrived in the warm security of parents who adored her. Robert and Sarah's ranch was also flourishing, their horse breeding operation showing early promise. The 2 families spent Christmas together, a celebration that felt complete in ways Cole's solitary holidays had never been. There were children and laughter, shared meals and stories, the kind of family gathering his parents would have loved. As he looked around the table on Christmas evening, at Amelia holding Grace, at Robert and Sarah discussing their plans for spring, at the warmth and contentment filling his home, Cole felt a gratitude so intense it was almost overwhelming. He'd been so afraid of this, so certain that opening his heart would destroy him. Instead, it had saved him. The new year arrived, bringing with it anticipation of the baby due in late spring. Amelia's pregnancy progressed smoothly, her body adapting more easily the second time. She continued her work through the winter months, though she accepted more help from Sarah, who'd proven to be an apt student of medicine. The two women worked well together, their shared experience with Blackwood creating a bond that went beyond friendship into something more like sisterhood. In March, with Amelia 7 months pregnant and beginning to slow down, an unexpected visitor arrived at the ranch. Eleanor Saunders, the territorial health official who'd been supportive from the beginning, came bearing news that made Amelia's eyes widen with shock. The territorial government is establishing a medical school in Helena, Mrs. Saunders announced. It will be small to start, just one building, a handful of students, but it's a real medical school with real accreditation. And Amelia, they want you to teach there. Not full-time, but perhaps one course per year on frontier medicine and emergency surgery. Your expertise is exactly what the students need. A medical school, Amelia breathed. In Montana. That's remarkable. It's necessary, Mrs. Saunders corrected. We can't keep depending on doctors trained back east who don't understand our conditions. We need to grow our own medical professionals who understand what it means to practice in isolated areas with limited resources. You've been doing that successfully for nearly 2 years now. Who better to teach the next generation? She'll do it, Cole said before Amelia could voice the doubts he saw forming on her face. She'll absolutely do it. We'll figure out the logistics. Cole, I have 2 children. Well, 1 and 1 on the way, Amelia protested. How can I possibly teach in Helena? The course would only be a few weeks once a year, Mrs. Saunders said. Intensive instruction, then back home. We'd work around your schedule, your children, your practice here. We're not asking you to give up your life, Amelia. We're asking you to share your knowledge so others can save lives the way you have. It was an offer impossible to refuse, and after talking it through with Cole that evening, Amelia accepted. She would begin teaching the following year after their second child was born and old enough to manage without her for short periods. It was another step forward, another way her influence would extend beyond the immediate community to shape the territory's future. April brought the birth of their son on a warm afternoon with birds singing outside and the smell of spring flowers drifting through open windows. The delivery was easier than Grace's had been, and when Mrs. Kowalski placed the baby in Cole's arms, he felt the same overwhelming love he'd experienced with his daughter, but tempered now by experience and confidence. What should we name him? Amelia asked, tired but radiant. James, Cole said immediately. After my father, if that's all right with you. James Whitmore. Amelia tested the name. It's perfect. Your father would be honored. They introduced Grace to her baby brother carefully, the toddler fascinated by the tiny person who'd suddenly appeared in their home. She patted his head gently, saying, "Baby," with proud importance, already taking her role as big sister seriously. The ranch house that had once seemed too large for one lonely cowboy now felt perfectly sized for a growing family. Cole would wake in the mornings to the sound of children, to Amelia's voice singing softly as she nursed James, to Grace's excited chatter as she played with her toys. The silence he'd once lived in had been replaced with the beautiful chaos of family life, and he wouldn't have changed it for anything. As summer arrived and James thrived, Cole found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. It had been just over 2 years since Amelia stepped off that stagecoach, 2 years that had contained more change, more challenge, more growth than some people experienced in a lifetime. They'd faced down threats, survived a harsh frontier, built successful enterprises, created a family. And through it all, the partnership they'd started with had deepened into a love that felt unshakable. One evening in late June, Cole and Amelia sat on the porch watching the sunset while their children slept inside. The land stretched before them, golden in the dying light, peaceful and productive. From the barn came the sounds of the ranch hands finishing evening chores. From Robert's place in the distance came the faint sound of horses whinnying. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked suddenly. "Answering that advertisement? Coming here instead of staying in Boston and fighting for your place there?" Amelia was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "Never. Boston was suffocating me. The restrictions, the expectations, the constant battle against people who thought women had no place in medicine. Here, I've built something that would have been impossible there. I'm not just practicing medicine, I'm teaching it, shaping policy, influencing how an entire territory approaches healthcare. I have a family I adore, work that fulfills me, and a community that values me for who I am rather than tolerating me despite it. How could I regret any of that? Even the hard parts, Cole pressed, Blackwood, the bounty hunters, the danger? Even those, Amelia confirmed, because they proved what we were capable of together. They showed us that our partnership could withstand real pressure, real threat. And emerging from those trials intact made everything sweeter. She took his hand, squeezing gently. What about you? Do you regret placing that advertisement, looking for a practical wife instead of letting yourself hope for love? I regret the fear that made me think practicality was safer than feeling, Cole said honestly. I wasted years being afraid of what my parents had, thinking it would destroy me the way I believed it destroyed my mother. But I don't regret the advertisement itself, because it brought you to me. And I don't even really regret starting as a practical arrangement, because it gave us space to grow into something real without the pressure of romantic expectations. We built our love on mutual respect and genuine partnership. That foundation has held up through everything. It has, Amelia agreed, and it will continue to hold. Whatever comes next, and I'm sure life has more surprises in store for us, we'll face it the way we've faced everything else, together. As autumn approached and the ranch prepared for another harvest season, Cole found himself thinking about legacy. What would they leave behind when they were gone? The ranch, certainly, which James or Grace might someday choose to run. Amelia's medical practice and teaching, which would continue benefiting people long after she retired. But more than that, they were leaving an example, a model of partnership and mutual respect, of two people building something greater together than either could have built alone. He wrote about this in the journal Amelia had given him, filling pages with observations and hopes and love letters to his children that they'd read someday. He wanted them to know how much they were cherished, how carefully their parents had built a life worth living, how love had transformed fear into courage and loneliness into fullness. One particularly beautiful October afternoon, Cole took Grace riding with him for the first time. The 3-year-old sitting in front of him on his horse and chattering excitedly about everything she saw. They rode up to a ridge overlooking the ranch, the place where Cole often went to think and to appreciate the scope of what they'd built. That's our home, he told Grace, pointing at the ranch spread out below. That's where Mama takes care of people who are sick, where your baby brother is sleeping, where we all live together as a family. Home, Grace repeated, the word clear and confident. We love home. We do love home, Cole agreed, emotion tightening his throat. And home loves us back. That simple statement from the mouth of a child captured something profound. Home wasn't just a place. It was love made tangible, security made real, the physical manifestation of everything they'd built together. And Grace understood that instinctively, knew in her bones that she was loved and safe and valued. That evening, as Cole helped Amelia with the children's bedtime routine, he felt a contentment so deep it almost frightened him. Was it possible to be this happy? Was it safe to feel this fulfilled, or was he tempting fate by acknowledging it? But as he watched Amelia kiss James goodnight and tuck Grace into bed, as he listened to her read a bedtime story in the voice their daughter loved, he realized that fear no longer had power over him. He'd been tested and hadn't broken. He'd loved deeply and hadn't been destroyed. He'd built a life worth living and it hadn't been taken from him. The Montana Territory stretched vast and beautiful around them, still harsh, still unforgiving, but no longer lonely. Cole Whitmore, who'd once been so isolated he'd placed an advertisement for companionship, now had more family and community than he'd ever imagined possible. And at the center of it all was the woman who'd answered that advertisement. The physician's assistant in a blue traveling dress who'd seen potential where he'd only offered practicality. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Cole found Amelia in their room, brushing her hair by lamplight. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Amelia asked, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "For answering that advertisement. For taking a chance on a lonely rancher you'd never met. For being brave enough to build a life with me. For loving me even when I was too afraid to love you back. For Grace and James and everything we've created together. for making this ranch feel like home instead of just a place I survived. Cole's voice roughened with emotion. For all of it, Amelia. Thank you for all of it. Amelia turned in his arms, her gray eyes shining with unshed tears. You don't need to thank me for choosing you, Cole. It's been the greatest privilege of my life. You saw me when others looked past me. You supported my dreams when others tried to limit them. You loved me, not despite my independence, but because of it. You gave me a home where I could be fully myself, physician and wife, healer and mother, all of it at once without having to choose. How could I not love you for that? They kissed with the tenderness of two people who'd been through fire together and emerged stronger, whose love had been tested and proven true. When they finally drew apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I used to be so afraid of this, he admitted, of loving someone so much that losing them would destroy me. But I understand now that my mother wasn't destroyed by loving my father. She was destroyed by losing herself in that love, by making him her entire identity. We haven't done that. We love each other fiercely, but we're still ourselves. That's the difference. That's what makes this sustainable. We enhance each other without consuming each other, Amelia agreed. We're partners who make each other stronger while remaining whole as individuals. That's what real love looks like, Cole. Not the romantic fantasy of two people becoming one, but the reality of two complete people choosing to build a life together. They held each other in the lamplight, listening to the familiar sounds of their home, the settling of the house, the soft breathing of their children in nearby rooms, the wind moving through the Montana night. Everything they'd fought for, everything they'd built, everything they'd become together was contained in this moment of quiet intimacy. The lonely cowboy who'd waited on the porch for his mail-order bride had found something far more valuable than the practical arrangement he'd sought. He'd found partnership, purpose, passion, and a love that made him braver than he'd ever been alone. He'd found home in a woman's arms, in children's laughter, in a community that valued what they'd built together. And as Cole lay in bed that night with Amelia sleeping beside him, her hand resting over his heart, he thought about how far they'd traveled from that first awkward meeting. They'd survived threats and trials that should have broken them. They'd built something extraordinary from a simple advertisement and a leap of faith. They'd created a family, a legacy, a life worth celebrating. Montana territory was still harsh, still unforgiving, still demanding everything from those who chose to make it home. But Cole and Amelia Whitmore had proven they could not only survive but thrive in this beautiful, brutal land. Their ranch would stand for generations. Their children would grow strong and capable. The medical practice and teaching Amelia had established would continue saving lives long after they were gone. But more than any of that, they'd proven that love, real love, the kind built on respect and partnership and choosing each other every day, could flourish even in the harshest conditions. That two people could find each other against impossible odds and build something that lasted. That home wasn't a place you were born, but something you created with the people you loved. The story that had begun with a simple advertisement and a desperate woman seeking escape had transformed into something far greater, a testament to courage, resilience, and the transformative power of love freely given and gratefully received. And as the Montana stars wheeled overhead and the land slept beneath them, Cole Whitmore finally understood the truth his heart had known from the moment Amelia stepped off that stagecoach. Home wasn't this ranch, these buildings, this land he'd worked so hard to claim and keep. Home was her. Home was them. Home was the life they'd built together, the family they'd created, the love that had grown from practical beginnings into something that would last as long as they both drew breath. And in the quiet darkness, holding the woman who'd answered his advertisement and changed his entire world, Cole whispered the words that had become his truth. Home isn't this ranch, Amelia. It never was. Home is you. Home is us. Home is wherever we are together. And I'm finally home. In her sleep, Amelia smiled and nestled closer, her body knowing what her sleeping mind couldn't acknowledge. That she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly who she belonged with, building exactly the life she'd come west hoping to find. They'd both been seeking safety and practicality, protection from the pain of loving too deeply. Instead, they'd found something infinitely more valuable, the courage to love fully, the strength to be vulnerable, and the wisdom to know that true partnership enhanced rather than diminished the individuals within it. The lonely cowboy wasn't lonely anymore, and the woman who'd run from one nightmare had awakened to a dream she hadn't known she was allowed to have. Together, they'd built a life, a family, a legacy that would echo through the Montana territory for generations to come. And under the vast western sky, their story closed, full, complete, and forever home.